It's a
Go live.
ruse.
Alright. I clicked go live. Now it's just the moment of truth.
Mm,
It looks good.
yeah, looks like it's going.
Alright. Hello everyone. Welcome to the Hylian Gamescast, episode 159, I believe. We have a lot of interesting news today, a couple of rumors, and it's just Daniel and I today. So
Yeah.
it's going to be one of those days. We were late because I have a brand new setup at, well, not a brand new. I had to take my normal setup and basically take it to my cousin's and make it again, and here we are. Oh, Natsu.
Here we are.
Natsu says, Jesse, you aren't on the toilet, are you? No. See, you must be confused.
Squatting.
Daniel's
in the
basement doesn't have a toilet.
shower. That's true. That's true. It doesn't. Oh dear.
So hopefully everything looks good for everybody.
Sounds good, I hope.
Well, I mean, do they really need to hear us?
It's recommended for a podcast that there's audio.
All right.
Typically.
So today we're going to be talking about the Nintendo Indie Direct announcements, a quick overview of all of the new games and old games announced or talked about. There is a new Mipha statue from First Four Figures. The Rivale statue finally shipped out not too long ago, and they are doing a giveaway for the Mipha statue, which is yet to be released. Nintendo has mentioned their next-gen console again, and we may have some updates on the Nintendo Online service. And some other couple of things with Twilight Princess and Metroid Prime that people can't seem to get enough of. So, yeah, do you want to start with the Nintendo Switch price drop, Daniel?
The Switch price drop. Yes. Well, this article comes from IGN yesterday, actually. Or no, it was updated yesterday. Actually, it was I think a couple days before. But I'll just go ahead and jump into it. So, Nintendo Switch has seen its first significant price drop ever in the US, months after regions such as the UK and Europe saw a similar reduction in price. The console could be now purchased at $259.99, a reasonable $40 drop from the previous $299.99 price point that it's held onto for almost 5 years. It's currently not clear whether this will be a permanent price cut or simply a limited time sale for the Switch. Now, actually, that's what it was, or what they wrote at the time that this article was initially published. But the price drop got uncut. It got taped. It got glued back together. They actually raised the price back up to $299.99 since yesterday. So that's worth noting. Back in September 2021, Nintendo Switch consoles sold in Europe got an official price cut not long before the Switch OLED model was released. There was some speculation about a US price cut as well, but Nintendo previously responded to this by saying there are no plans for a price drop in the US. But around 9 months later, albeit via a sale, the price reduction has come to fruition, with Nintendo Switch consoles currently down to $259.99 at Amazon, GameStop, and Walmart. Those are some big retailers. So this isn't some like rando business doing its thing. Nintendo confirmed this week that it sold 235 million games for Switch in a financial year 2021, the highest number sold in a single year in the company's history. Console sales also continue to bode well, with the 3 Switch models selling 23 million units in fiscal year 2021. But while this is a huge number by comparison, PS5 sold 11.5 million in the same period. It's also a 20% drop from fiscal year 2020, which makes sense. That 2020 was when, pandemic happened and everything, everybody stayed at home. Tons of people wanted video games suddenly. Nintendo Switch now sits at 107.65 million units sold in total, only trailing Game Boy and Nintendo DS as Nintendo's most successful consoles of all time. So big sales, this is good. Temporary price drop, which it's unclear if this maybe was supposed to happen or the retailers jumped the gun or who knows. But at least for a few days, the price got cut by a cool 40 USD, which is not bad.
Yeah. Not bad. When I was looking into this, the reason that I was able to find through my research, which admittedly isn't that great, Wi-Fi in the basement doesn't reach through all the metal bars and stuff and the layers of concrete. But I was able to find that a lot of people were thinking the price drop was because of, with it not selling that well, just giving people a bit more motivation to go out and buy one. Like maybe they won't buy it for $300, but maybe they would for like $40 less. And if it comes with the game, then that's great. But apparently a lot of retailers were selling so many of them that they ended up bumping the price back up to normal. And others ended up selling out and then doing the same thing. So it's unclear if, as you said, if certain retailers jumped the gun and did the sale early, which when I worked at GameStop, we did that a few times. It makes the store ends up making less profit because when Nintendo officially lowers the price, then they're taking that loss. But if the store itself discounts something, then the store is taking the loss. But they did it to kind of get ahead of like Walmart and other places. So that could be the same situation that goes on here. And also with the Switch being out for so long and not seeing a price drop, it makes sense that it is finally getting one. Nintendo isn't very well known for discounting their games and stuff.
They are not.
Yeah.
Except for Nintendo Selects, which they stopped doing, which is too bad. I really liked
that
program.
I just realized that.
Yeah.
Was that with the Wii U?
Wii U
they stopped.
And 3DS. Yeah, Wii U and 3DS had it.
Maybe
so
there weren't enough Wii U's sold for a game to reach that status.
Or you know what I think it is that with the Wii U and 3DS, they were struggling a little bit. You know what I mean? And so they were putting out
with 3DS
deals to get people. Well, 3DS didn't suffer as badly as the Wii U did, but like in the later days of the 3DS, like console was running cold. And so they wanted to, give these deals to entice people more and more. And then Switch is selling so well that they're like, well, we don't have to price drop it because people will buy it anyways, even if we don't. No one, yeah. And it's true. It's true because, like, for example, with PlayStation, I basically don't buy any PlayStation games new. I just wait a few months and then it goes on sale for like $20, $40, and then I buy it. Like, I don't buy any PlayStation games new because I know I can just wait it out for a price drop, like very, very, like not even a long wait. Nintendo doesn't do it though. So it's interesting.
When it comes to Xbox games, I tell as many people as I can, don't buy an Xbox, just spend the money on a PlayStation or a Nintendo, because if you have a computer, literally every, or almost every, Xbox game is playable on PC.
Oh, yeah.
Because
you could just do Game Pass, right?
Yeah. Like I let 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 I forgot about it because I never used it, and it ended up canceling on her, which I feel bad about.
Oh no.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like PlayStation started putting their games on PC little by little. But with Microsoft, since the Xbox One, they started as if you have a PC, then you can play the game and make it look even better than on the console. But I know some people do just love the simplicity of turning on a console and playing instead of having to update drivers and make sure the USBs are connected and the Bluetooth's working for the controller and you have enough space on your hard drive and blah, blah, blah. So I kind of understand of just getting a console, but if you already have a computer that you know can run the games, then there's really no point of getting an Xbox, which makes me sad because there should be a reason to get every console.
Yeah,
but
we should.
So I think this also this first story ties into our second story, where from Nintendo Life, Nintendo says moving to its next console is a major concern. We were talking about the sales dropping down, Nintendo lowering the price. It could be to, as it ties in with this, to boost their, as you'll see in the quote, they refer to them like the Nintendo family or the fan base, customers, whatever they are to Nintendo, to build that up and strengthen that as much as possible. That way, later this year or next year, whenever they do announce the next console, there are even more people who have purchased into the Nintendo Switch library or whatever, and potentially selling the Switch at a lower cost for a limited amount of time to get more people that may end up really enjoying the Switch and wanting to get whatever the next thing Nintendo comes out with is. It's almost like the same thing they did with the Nintendo Wii before around the time the Wii U came, because they released that weird model of the Nintendo Wii that didn't have GameCube ports. Yeah, no GameCube controller ports, no internet capabilities. And so
what's it called? Like just like the Wii Mini or something like that, right?
Yeah,
Like,
but it's like the Wii's already super tiny. Did you really have like how much money did you actually save?
The Wii is not a large console.
Yeah.
Those are like rare and sought after now though.
Yeah.
They're like not common, you know? Like regular Wii is like you can get them anywhere secondhand easily.
But I think they did that to kind of push more people, because with the new version someone might be interested in going out and buying it. That way when they do release the Wii U, or if they end up liking the Wii, then they'll be like, oh, the Wii U, what is that? No, but
what was that?
Yeah, I think that's kind of their idea on that whole thing. Just to get more consoles there so that more people will eventually upgrade. But we will talk about our thoughts on how Nintendo could do this after we take a look at the actual news. So it says, Nintendo says moving to its next console is a major concern. Taking the Switch's massive following to a new system is no easy feat. Nintendo has said the transition to its next console is a major concern, and they have a typo here. Games Radar, shame on you. In an investor Q&A session earlier this week, translated by Video Game Culture, I assume? No, VideoGamesChronicle.com. Nintendo President Shintaro Furukawa was asked about Nintendo's eventual transition to its next console, which many people believe Nintendo's never ever going to release another console, which is really weird, but I get those comments all the time. The quote says...
Really? People actually comment that, saying that
Nintendo's
not going to release another console?
Comments, it's like Nintendo's never going to release a Switch 2 or a next-gen whatever. They're just focusing on the Switch.
Do they...
And then some people are like, Nintendo doesn't...
their first console they ever bought?
And they're like, Nintendo... Why would Nintendo release a more powerful console? They don't care about graphics.
Oh my god.
They don't need more powerful thing.
If that were the case, we'd still be rocking the Wii.
Also, I was doing a bit of research for a Twilight Princess video that I'm working on, and there was legitimately from 𝗟𝗵𝗲. He said he was asked what was the major reason or the thing that he looked forward to the most with Twilight Princess HD's remaster for the Wii U.
Right.
And his answer? Guess. Remember, Nintendo doesn't care about graphics. No.
Or was it just the upgraded graphics? Just like...
Yeah, improved graphics.
Clarity? Alright.
Like his first answer to it was literally just improved graphics.
Yeah. I mean, the thing saying like Nintendo doesn't care about graphics is kind of a misnomer. It's more like Nintendo carefully balances affordability with its hardware specs, which is why things like the Wii and the Game Boy, the OG Game Boy, sold super well.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, like, the Nintendo's underpowered console trend started with the Wii.
Mm-hmm.
The N64 and GameCube were both competitively powerful consoles for the time. They just had weird caveats, like being on cartridges or mini discs. But aside from those formatting issues,
and in
for the physical media,
one of the last videos that I uploaded a week or two ago, it was talking about, I don't even remember what the video was, but there was a quote, and I had the screenshot in there, of Reggie, when the Wii U first came out, bragging on, like, live news across America, or the world, whatever, about how Nintendo had the most powerful console that you could go and purchase. And I'm like, but Nintendo doesn't care about graphics. Right, why is he bragging about... Yeah. Anyways, the rest of this...
yes, sorry.
I don't even remember where I got to. The question of whether... Okay, Shintaro Furukawa was asked about Nintendo's eventual transition. This is what happens when we don't have Chubes or Geek here to whip us and get us back on track. Transition to its next console. The question of whether we will be able to just as smoothly transition from the Nintendo Switch to the next generation of hardware is a major concern for us, Furukawa said. The Nintendo president added that, based on the company's experiences with the Wii and Nintendo DS, it's clear one of the obstacles in the imminent future is addressing how to transition to the next console. Furukawa specifically references how to move the Switch's already massive player base to Nintendo's next eventual console. A quote from Furukawa: "While we will continue launching new software on the Nintendo Switch, we will also provide services that also use Nintendo accounts and other IP outside of gaming software. We intend for this to help build a lasting impact with our customers," Furukawa said, adding that Nintendo would also work to keep players around by building long-term partnerships with customers. It's clear that Nintendo is focusing on winning the trust of consumers to support the follow-up to the Nintendo Switch. When that might be, however, is not entirely clear. Furukawa and Nintendo of America president Doug Bowser have said in the past that the Nintendo Switch is still roughly in the middle of its overall life cycle. If this is the case, we could be waiting at least another 4 years to see the next Nintendo console. So every time I see this, I want to correct this. The middle of its overall life cycle. That doesn't mean that you're going to need to wait like the entire second half of the console's life cycle before you get a new console. Like when going from PlayStation 3 to the PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5, just because a new console releases doesn't mean the company just completely abandons the old console. They always, you'll see games, especially from third parties, keep coming out 2 or 3 years after the new console releases. I remember from PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4 or Xbox 360 to Xbox One, there was a bunch of games like from Ubisoft or EA or whatever, like Call of Duty or Assassin's Creed and all of these, where if you had purchased it on the PS3, then you could pay like an additional $10 fee or something to get the upgraded version for the new next-gen console. And even though like the PlayStation 4 where the PlayStation 5 has been out for like 2 years or so, we still see a bunch of games releasing for the PlayStation 4. And even up until a couple of years ago, Ubisoft was releasing games for the Nintendo Wii. I wonder what game that could be, Daniel.
Yeah, I wonder.
Just Dance.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was wild.
Yeah. So whenever they say their life cycle, they don't mean that as soon as like you have to wait that long until the next thing comes out. It just means that they still plan on continuing to support it with online updates, firmware updates, new games, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also kind of like just a way of it almost feels to me like kind of a non-statement. Like
when Miyamoto promised no other 3DS models was going to come out.
Right, it's just one of those classic Nintendo lies, right?
Yeah.
Because what's going to happen is if you have someone who's like on the fence about, oh, should I get a Switch now, or it's already been out for so long, so maybe I'll just wait because the new console will be out like soon, and then they can just come and say, oh no, because the Switch is still in the middle of its life cycle. So then it quells that hesitation. People are like, oh well, I don't want to wait that long. Then I'll just buy one now. And it's like I says, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just one of those things. Nintendo they just say things sometimes, right?
They just say things.
They do. they just say things sometimes. So yeah, I wouldn't read into like the middle of its life cycle thing too much personally, but that's just me, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I thought of is it said continue partnerships with customers.
Yeah, that,
because you would imagine they would continue partnerships with like third parties or something. And the IP outside of video games, I think that just simply means like what they're doing with Super Nintendo World and the Super Mario movie, where it's their video game IP, but they're going to continue trying to gain a new fan base that may go watch the movie or go to Super Nintendo World and end up being like, oh, maybe this would be interesting to pick up this game or something like that. And yeah, so that's basically it. But the question for this, how do you think, like, what? So Nintendo, like, they kind of dipped low on the GameCube. From like the NES to the GameCube, each console sold less and less and less and less. Like the Super Nintendo sold less than the NES, the N64 sold less than the the Super Nintendo, the GameCube sold less than the N64. But then when the Wii came, it did phenomenally well. And you would imagine, like the second more powerful Wii, the Wii U, a lot of those people would be like, oh, I had a Wii, now it's in HD, I should go buy this. You would think if Nintendo could have done their marketing correctly, then that would have ended up a better situation for everyone. And they wouldn't have lost so many customers and had to win them back with the Switch or the different versions of the 3DS. And so all the people they lost with the Wii U, presumably they gained back with the Switch. And now, instead of the two consoles, they only have the one console. So when the Switch released, there were 3DS fans that purchased it, and there were Wii U fans that purchased it. So going from one console being supported by the fan base of two different consoles, how do you think Nintendo could properly market this, or what could they do to make sure that their next console is as much of a success and not fall into the Wii U trap again?
Well, before we get into answering that question, Jesse, we have a super chat from Envy, who asks, and thank you for the super chat, Envy. Appreciate
Yes,
that,
thank
by
you.
the way. What about that Zelda anime? What about that, Jessie?
I think that guy leaked it on the podcast, and Miyamoto got bummed out and canceled it, along with the Star Fox thing.
Yeah, that is what happened, isn't it? Like,
yeah, and
not our podcast, by the way, guys. But no, yeah, there was legit, like, people talked about it for years about, oh, there's Zelda. Netflix is working on a Zelda show, and that, like, every 6 months I'd see this same news articles going around.
Yeah, it was the biggest clickbait hit. It's the Twilight Princess HD coming to Switch of the Wii U era.
Right. It was the Zelda show coming to Netflix.
Yeah, to where, like,
clickbait headline.
Every 3 or 4 months, all these websites would begin talking about it again as if it's news.
As if it's new.
And it's like,
I've seen this one.
Yeah, it's like, no, you're literally quoting the same source as last time. And even if it's a different source, it's just like the same person saying the same thing. It's like, I heard.
Yeah.
Like, who did you hear from? Tell us.
But in the case of that, as well as the Star Fox show, apparently, which we only found out about later, apparently they weren't just rumors. That was legit. That was in the works. But because it leaked, Miyamoto pulled the plug on it.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like, well, no, screw this. I obviously cannot trust you people to keep your mouths shut, so I can't work with you. Which is kind of like a whole vibe, a whole energy of Miyamoto to have.
Yeah,
they do that. But
I think,
yeah,
wasn't Zelda supposed to be an anime, and then the Star Fox was like they made puppets for the show? It was going to be like live action with puppets?
I might have heard it conflicting, because there was like a animated Star Fox thing that went, it was a big marketing thing for Star Fox Zero back in the day. Do you remember that? And then there was like the Star Fox animated short that happened, that came out around that time as well. And part of me was thinking maybe it was supposed to be something like that. But maybe I might be misremembering this. I do remember that there was a Star Fox thing though that got canceled, but if they actually continued in that direction with it, it could have actually been good. Because I remember thinking that Star Fox animated short wasn't bad for what it was. It was basically just like a really over-the-top intro for the game. But the art style was really cool, actually. So, yeah.
Wasn't there a game they promoted with puppets?
Star Fox Zero did have puppets in it. I think that they animated the characters to look like puppets, at least, because Miyamoto was a fan of those old, like, not Thunder. No. You know what I'm talking about? Those old
the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
No. It was like the show. It was like a puppet. It had puppets in it, and it was like pilots flying around. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I cannot remember the title of the show. Someone in the chat.
I think you're thinking of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
And my brain keeps wanting to go to Thundercats, and I'm like, it's not Thundercats.
No. I'm sure someone in the chat will mention it, but
someone in the chat, save me from this embarrassment.
Yeah, and then there was presumably the person who went on to direct the Castlevania anime for Netflix would have been most likely
Thunderbirds.
Thunderbirds.
I was looking it up. Thunderbirds. That's the show.
Someone said Wonder Pits.
It was a show in the 60s.
Oh, that Jose says they also had puppets for that one E3 where they had the robot chicken people.
It was like part of the and they also had their own direct, like they had a Miyamoto, Iwata, and Reggie puppet, and then they turned into Star Fox characters. Thunderbirds, though, look it up. It's a show from the 60s that used puppets And that actually Miyamoto was a fan of it, and a lot of Star Fox's inspiration apparently comes from that. It's a true story.
Nice.
Look it up.
So yeah, presumably that would have been the director who would have made it, since he was already working for Netflix and ended up working on, I think he did Castlevania, and then there was a second one that he teased out something, and because he posted a Zelda picture not too long before, we even made a video about it. We did like an impromptu live stream talking about him teasing out Zelda, and maybe that was him teasing out like not his next project, but like giving a hint like, hey, this could have happened, but you guys leaked it, so now I don't get to work on Zelda. Shame on you.
Man, can you imagine? Like, that would just suck if just imagine you're this guy, right? And you get to work on Zelda as like a property, like, and you're a big Zelda fan, and you're like, hell yeah, I'm gonna do this. And then someone, who knows who, someone working there leaks it, and then Miyamoto gets mad and pulls the plug, and you're just like, man, I had this opportunity in the palm of my hand.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be devastated. I would be absolutely devastated. If I were in that position, that would suck.
Yeah. So back to the news, I guess. Yeah. I understand them saying that they're concerned, because it seems like every time they come out with a big console, it does fail to attract people with the next one. Like the 3DS it sold well at the very, very beginning, but then it took a nosedive, and Nintendo ended up doing the big price drop like a couple of months after it released. And as they literally apologized for pricing it too high, basically, and then all the people that purchased it at full price when they could have waited like a month or two and got it at a lower price. And they ended up doing that Nintendo 3DS Ambassador program, where you could get certain games that never appeared on the eShop, like I think A Link to the Past, the Game Boy Advance version or something like that, and then Minish Cap. I don't remember what all, but they gave out, like, there was like 10 or 15, maybe more games that they just gave away for free as an apology.
Was that Four Swords Anniversary?
No, that was for the 25th anniversary.
Okay, I remember that being something about 3DS Ambassador program or something.
Yeah. Actually, I can look it up. But yeah, go ahead and how do you think they could do this and not lose out on a bunch of fans?
I mean,
did they name it Switch U?
I think Switch 2.
No, not Switch U.
Straightforward. Like, no, not Switch U. No, but I do think just I'm a believer in keeping things understandable and straightforward. Function over form in this case. Not to say that it should have nothing cool about it or whatever, but like the Switch, when they market the Switch, it's and I think this goes for the Wii as well. The marketing for it, the concept of the console, everything was clear and understandable, and like doesn't need explanation. You just you see it in action and you understand what it is. Like the first trailer for the Switch, it's on a TV. The guy takes it out of the TV, then he's playing it in his hand, and then the guy's on the airplane. He's playing it. Like it's understandable. And I think Switch is popular enough that if they're gonna have a successor that's like the same concept, they need to make sure that they are adequately marketing it as a successor and not like something incremental or like a half step or just a
the XL
improvement. Yeah, or exactly.
Game Boy Advance SP.
Yeah. And so like the Switch OLED or OLED Switch, for example, they were pretty clear about it, that like this is still just the Switch, but it's an upgrade. They need to make sure that the new console, that there's no confusion like that. Like that they're being explicit that this is not an upgrade like the Switch OLED. This is its own thing. So I honestly just think Switch 2, it's straightforward. Like PlayStation again. Is like there's no confusion about PlayStation generations. Like PlayStation 5 or PlayStation 4, like they're not elegant names by any stretch, but they're understandable. There's no confusion about it. No one talks about PlayStation 5 and is like, is that just a PlayStation 4 but with a new controller? That's the new controller for PS4? Like no, there's no confusion about that, right? So yeah, that's my take. That's my spicy hot take. So, and like you look at Game Boy Advance, it's like it's obvious that that's like, at least in my eyes, like that one kind of plays it a little on the edge. Like you could say that, oh, a Game Boy Advance just sounds like an upgrade of Game Boy, but like I feel like they market it pretty well, as well enough as being a successor, a true generation. So like that's really all it comes down to, is just they need to convey it properly, and they have to have the games there for people to play. They need a strong part of Switch's success. I think its two best years of sales were this launch year and then 2020, right? And those were good years for games as well. Well, 2020, honestly, you can't take 2020 as just in every regard a statistical outlier, but like 2017, its launch year, they had such a strong year of releases of games. So that's what I think is most important. If they're gonna jump into or transition to a new generation, market it appropriately, convey effectively what the console is, and have good games available for people to play. That's all. That's all I do. I'm done rambling, Jesse. You tell me your take on this subject.
I will not.
Oh, okay.
I will tell you, however, I looked up the Nintendo 3DS Ambassador Program, and it's just go over it really quick because I thought it was interesting, because it was the only way to get some of these games, because they just never released them for the normal people to buy. You had to be part of the program. It says Nintendo 3DS Ambassador Program is a program that Nintendo launched for the 3DS. This program was made by Nintendo in recognition of players who bought the 3DS for $249.99 before the price dropped to $169.99 on August 12th, 2011. In order to become an ambassador, players had to log on to the Nintendo eShop with their 3DS before August 12th, and then update the console. The Nintendo 3DS Ambassador Program offers 10 NES games for early adopters and also offers 10 Game Boy Advance games starting December 16, 2011, making 20 games in total. In addition to the 20 free games, the Nintendo 3DS Ambassador may also download a special Ambassador Certificate. The certificate has a notification feature which, when toggled on, allows the player to receive special notifications exclusive to the Nintendo 3DS Ambassadors, which means I think they would give you the opportunity to purchase certain downloadable games early, or it's just stuff like that. After a system update,
I missed out on this program.
It is possible for players to transfer their NES and Game Boy Advance games to another 3DS system. So the NES games were Super Mario Bros., Metroid, The Legend of Zelda, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, Balloon Fight, Ice Climber, NES Open Tournament, Golf, which also, wasn't that the one that they secretly put in the code of the Switch? That people like hacked in their Switch and was like, oh, there's this random golf game on there.
NES Golf.
Like a tribute to Iwata. And then
I think so.
Yoshi and Wrecking Crew. And then the Game Boy Advance games were Metroid Fusion, which I know you love. Mario vs. Donkey Kong. Mario Kart Super Circuit. Yoshi's Island, Super Mario Advance 3, WarioWare, Mega Micro Game, The Legend of Zelda Minish Cap, Fire Emblem, The Sacred Stones, Wario Land 4, F-Zero Maximum Velocity, and Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. So you got all those games for free. And I don't know about you, but I paid like $12 for the Minish Cap on Wii U.
That sounds right. I thought there was a little less than that. Maybe not. I don't know. But Minish Cap's a good game. But yeah, that's a lot of good, not just a lot of free games, but a lot of good games too.
Yeah.
Like, dang. Yeah, man.
So my thoughts on what they could do is don't give it a stupid name. Don't change the name. Like, I think with the Wii U, they may have thought they were trying to be clever.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's still called the Wii, but it's not the Wii 2 or Wii HD or whatever the code names were for it. So with the Wii U, people, just thought like, what does that mean? And I think Nintendo said like there was a specific meaning behind it. I forgot what it was, and it was the same with the Miitopia or 𝗵𝗲 or whatever they called it. There was like a special name they gave it because it was sentimental as well. But instead of trying to be unique in that way, they should understand, like, think about how smart the average person is. And then remember,
not very.
And then remember, half of all people are dumber than that. Because the average person because the average person would be right in the middle. So, especially with the Wii and the Wii U and all that stuff, because they had the 3DS, the 3DS XL, the new 3DS, with the DS they had the DS, DSi, DSi XL, the GBA had the SP. So like when you just put like a random word or letters after something, people are just gonna think, oh, it's just like another one of those. It's just like an incremental upgrade. So don't give it confusion like that. Like, don't call it the Switch Pro, which I don't think they would be. I think the OLED may have began as the Switch Pro.
Right.
And then, but now, like, there's still people saying Nintendo needs to release a Switch Pro, but so long has passed that it would kind of be ridiculous for them to release like a half-gen step.
Mm-hmm.
Because playing the same games but looking a little bit better wouldn't, like that. There's no point in that when it already struggles to run third-party games on that come from PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One, and now it's not even getting most upcoming third-party games because those third-party games, even with the Switch having trouble running a bunch of PS4 and Xbox One ports, now they suddenly have to port games that are designed for consoles that are even more powerful. Mm-hmm. So, it's just, that's why we probably get all of these games that third parties don't even want to take the time to port, and they just stream it through the cloud, which is one of my biggest fears for their Direct next month, that we're going to see a lot of third parties bringing their games over, but it's just going to be streaming because it's really simple for them to do, and it's fast and cheap, and if it doesn't sell a lot, it doesn't matter because they only had like one guy work on it and upload it to the cloud, and they already have games that run on the cloud service with PC and everything, so doing the same thing for the Switch isn't really that big of a deal. But anyways, so instead of doing that, it needs to be like a Switch 2, and don't change it to something else. Don't call it like a Super Switch or anything. Just like have it the Switch 2. That way people will easily be able to understand. They've gone through like
it's just
dozens of iPhone models, several PS4 versions, and make it clear again, like once again, that it isn't just a home console. It isn't just this. Like, market it as like if it supports 4K, say that. They mention using other stuff outside of gaming to like make a family or whatever out of their customers. That way they'll be more likely to come over. But like the Wii U, even the 3DS had stuff like Netflix. And I think maybe even Hulu and other stuff. And those are like simple apps where it's like, why doesn't the Switch have apps like that? when the Wii U did, and as
Well,
ridiculous
we
as it
finally
was, the 3DS did.
got Twitch on Switch of
Mhm.
all things. But yeah, no, it's kind of baffling to me that we never got Netflix or any other streaming service properly. Um, like I have no doubt the Switch could do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And then
it's really weird.
the other thing is to make sure it is powerful enough to where it is easy for third parties to port over their games, and they're not having to make it run at the same resolution that the GameCube ran at, like it does with like Witcher or Doom. Do you want to play Doom?
How did I know you were gonna go there as soon
No,
as you
so-
said Doom?
Yeah. So like, you know, they say like the Switch, it's an HD console, but then there's a lot of third-party games where the games don't even play in HD. So
Right.
it doesn't have to play all these games in 4K. Like the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox One X or Series X still has trouble playing certain games at like a full 4K. Usually it's like a dynamic resolution or 1440p or whatever, somewhere in between. So it doesn't need to run every single thing at 4K, but as long as it can run certain games like Mario Kart or whatever at 4K, and then it's still able to play third-party games and have it still be in HD. That way it's easier. It has the power for third parties to easily bring it over. Then they're going to get a lot of people who choose not to buy Nintendo consoles because most of the games they play are third-party games. They made a big deal after the Wii because a lot of companies did not support the Wii. When they would make a game, a third-party game for the Wii, the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 would get like the actual game, and then the Wii would get like a dumbed-down version of the game. Whenever the Arkham games came out for PlayStation 3 and stuff, the Wii got Batman Blackgate or something. It was just like literally almost a 2D side scroller. And then like all the sports games ran off of like the older engines, which is the same thing the Switch does. When you get everyone complained about FIFA and all of the other EA games not running on the new engines and missing a lot of the features because it has to play the PS3 and 360 versions, which nobody wants. Because if you're going to pay $60 for a game, why wouldn't you get the one that not only looks better, but plays better, has more support, and actually had time spent developing it, instead of just putting a new number on it. So it has to be at least powerful enough to do that. They need to get that across to their people, because what I was saying a minute ago, I got off topic. With the Wii, when they first released the Wii U, because they had lost so much support with the Wii, one of the big things they did to market the Wii U was they were like, we have all of these third-party developers making exclusive games for us, which is how we got like Rayman Legends and Zombie U and stuff like that. But the Wii U did so poorly that those exclusives very quickly ended up releasing on other consoles. And
Zombie U and just became Zombie.
Yeah, and then all of those third parties just skipped a step. Instead of no longer making exclusives and just bringing over normal third-party ports, they just stopped supporting it altogether. They even had a big deal with Sega to create those Sega Sonic exclusive Wii U games, and that didn't work out very well for Sega. So yeah, they just need to get everything good with all of their third parties, which it seems like they've done better with on the Switch, and then they need to have it backwards compatible and show that it's backwards compatible in the same way that the PlayStation 5 or even the PlayStation 4 Pro plays the normal PlayStation 4 games, to where if you have Breath of the Wild,
Mhm.
or if you have Kirby or Mario Kart, Smash Bros. Ultimate, you can still play all of those games on this new console. You don't have to like start your gaming library over from nothing. You can still play them.
Wouldn't that be nice?
And it's, yeah, like what they did with the GBA to the DS or the DS to the 3DS. Yeah, actually all of those handheld consoles played each other's games, didn't they? Like the Game Boy to Game Boy Color, like... Game Boy Color to Game Boy Advance, Advance to DS, DS to 3DS. Yeah, that's crazy. That's like 20 years of backwards compatibility. Almost.
Well, like, almost. But like it was like incremental. Like it was like the 3DS couldn't play Game Boy games, for example.
Right.
Like it was always just one step back of compatibility. So
yeah. Whereas, was it the DS that had a slot for Game Boy Advance games and DS games? Or was it the Game... No.
The DS had a separate slot for GBA games, yeah.
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 So, I'm not saying that Nintendo needs to do that for the Switch, but... or the Switch 2.
Right.
But just have those...
All they need to do is make the carts for whatever the Switch 2 console be like the same, I don't know, type of carts. And then just have it so Switch carts can also fit in there.
And if someone has $300 or $350 to go buy a new console, or to go buy the Switch 2, but they don't have an extra $60 or $70 to buy a game for it, then they're just going to be like, well, I'll just wait a few more months, or I'll wait till never when the price drops, because it's Nintendo. Mm-hmm. And they just end up not getting one at all. So if they allow it to play all of these older games and possibly like make them look even better on the newer console like other consoles do, then I think that would be a way for the person who is like, well, I only have $400, so I can only afford this console.
Right.
But if I go and buy the console, at least I can play all of my old games and they'll look better, instead of me just having a paperweight that does nothing because things are expensive and I can't afford a game. And so that's a really, really long answer, so I apologize for that, but that's basically it. Just be smart with the marketing. Let them know third parties can be played, that it's backwards compatible, that it is still acts, looks, and functions basically like a Switch, but it's just better.
Yep.
And
easy.
Give it actual voice chat or something. A better online service.
I'm not even too worried about voice chat personally, but like I know a lot of people do want that. So
yeah, which I think brings us to the next topic, Daniel. If you want to do the
yes. Alrighty. Just gonna switch over to it, as it were. Ha 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 ha. So the or which one you want to do for next? Are we going bottom to top here on our list? Because it seems like it. Switch online service. Sure, I'm just gonna launch into it. So this actually comes from comicbook.com.
Yeah.
Nintendo Switch upgrade potentially leaked is the title of the headline. We'll see how actually potentially it is, but Nintendo may be finally making a long overdue improvement to Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch Online. The Nintendo Switch is on pace to be one of the best-selling game consoles of all time, blah, blah, blah. We know that. The novel nature of the console is good, etc., etc. Anyways, over on Reset Era, Nintendo fan has pointed out that a recent Splatoon 3 trailer seems to hint at a revamp of the Switch friend code system. Right now, the only way to add friends on Nintendo Switch is to punch in their numeric, way too long, too many digits long friend code, which is an archaic and inconvenient system. There are a few reasons why this system is in place, but one of the reasons is because Switch users can change their names on the fly. In other words, their account is attached not to a unique username, but to a unique code. Interestingly, the aforementioned trailer shows players with a 4-digit numeric code next to their username. If this method sounds familiar, it's because it's it's used on a variety of platforms such as Discord. This allows users to add friends via their name plus the code. This wouldn't be a huge improvement for Switch and Switch Online, but it would be an improvement nonetheless. It's unclear what these numbers could be indicative of, if not this. The first 2 Splatoon games don't have any type of in-game friend system, and there's no reason to expect this to change. That said, this is the only other explanation that comicbook.com can think of. So, what do you think about this, Jesse?
I thought you would never ask. I think it's so we see it in the trailer that has a different interface for the Switch online service. Nintendo is seemingly always adding to their online service. Like, they had the expansion pass and the different games and the downloadable content that you get for free, everything. So I could see them, now that they are hopefully making more money through their online service, they can invest that money back into their online service. Right. It amazes me, all of the stuff they were able to do with just the regular 3DS. Like, when you played Star Fox 64 3D, you could have online multiplayer, not just with voice chat, but with actual video like the video of the people you're playing against, like above their character, so you can see their reactions and everything.
Video chat.
Yeah, while you're playing the game online. How crazy is that? The Wii U was literally a phone that you could video call people with. That was just an app on it. Which was weird. But then you get the Switch, and it doesn't even have the proper voice chat. You had to buy that weird adapter, even though some games could somehow make Bluetooth work with the voice chat, which was really weird. Because it's like, if some games could do it, then why couldn't they just do it with the Switch itself? And so it has all these things which they could upgrade in their next console, but they could also give the people who do have the Switch better online service. Splatoon 2 would be the game to do that with, because it is one that relies on a lot of frantic voice chats. And for people going out purchasing that game and making new friends, it does make it a bit easier for them to add people instead of typing in like a long string of digits and numbers and letters and shapes and colors and everything. Just type in their name with 4 letters after it, and it's a lot easier to remember. So, yeah, I don't think it's something they're doing specifically for Splatoon, but I think Splatoon would be a big reason behind them doing it.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see if they do like an update for Splatoon 2 before Splatoon 3 launches. Like, I keep thinking about how for Mario Party, before they did an update to their online service and launched Mario Party Superstars, they updated Super Mario Party first, just to, I guess, maybe just to test it out, make us all their guinea pigs and such. So just a thought. I'd be curious to see what happens. That's all.
Yeah, actually, I just thought of this. There is somewhat precedent for them to do this with Splatoon, because if you remember that weird adapter thing that they were like, you can plug your phone with the app on it into this thing and then plug it into your Switch and all that stuff.
That thing was awful and convoluted,
but
it was just a bad luck.
Wasn't it specifically designed in the shape of one of the Splatoon things, like one of the squids? Like, it was in the shape and design of it?
It was in the design of, I think, one of the in-game like cosmetic items you could get. You could get like those headphones in the game, I think.
All right. So if they released like game specific hardware to help people with voice chat when the Switch and Splatoon 2 first released, then it would make sense for them to do something similar again with the sequel and give another advancement for their voice chat and online service. So, yeah, it kind of makes sense that it would be Splatoon, because you don't need to really voice chat with Smash Brothers or Mario Kart. Like, there's no reason that you need to communicate with people. And this is like, hey, watch out for the blue shell.
It's just, yeah, it's more for like team-based games like Splatoon that you'd need it or want it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I could see, especially, like, for just, like, the regular matches, I don't know if you would necessarily need it, but Salmon Run, which we know is returning for Splatoon 3.
Can Salmon Run?
I could definitely see it. Like, there's a... Sorry?
Can Salmon Run?
They can in Splatoon.
Cool.
So, just there. That's the only time. But no, that's definitely a far more cooperative strategic experience than regular like turf war in Splatoon. So I could definitely see voice chat needing or being more, I don't know, necessary feeling, if that makes sense. Yeah. That's all.
Cool. Yeah, so the next thing, very, very simple. Let's see. They announced the Mipha statue, which you can't even pre-order it yet, I don't think. But first 4 figures are doing a giveaway for their... It's the second first 4 figures statue for the champions that they released. I think 4th overall for the Breath of the Wild series. They have the Link and Zelda. Now they have Rivali just released, and now Mipha is coming out. So you can enter it on their website for free and get a chance to win one of the exclusive, the more expensive editions of it. They had more details on... Let me see if I can find it. But while I look for it, because it was a weird Instagram post that I seen, Daniel, what are your thoughts on this statue and first 4 figures?
Cool. It's kind of wild that it's taken this long. Like, it was April last year when they first talked about doing like the champion statues, right?
Yeah,
wasn't it April last year? Yeah. So, you know, there's that. I'm just like shocked it's taken over a year. But yeah, I mean, it looks great. It's I think it is like pretty much the pose of the Zora's Domain one. Actually, I think it's also the same pose as like the Amiibo.
Yeah.
But our first 4 figures that I probably won't get it because first 4 figure stuff is... I wouldn't buy it, but I mean, giveaways are always cool. They're always fun. I like collectible goodies.
On their Instagram, what I looked for, you can see it on the stream, is this little... They posted a video of it with more details. It's a 9-inch statue. Comparatively, they are all basically to scale relative to each other. So, I almost said Joe, not Joe. Daruk would be like the same percentage taller than the Mipha one. Rivali would be the same, like taller or whatever. So it like they're not all the same size, but they are all to scale to each other. So they are. It does look proper with them together. They're doing a launch stream May 17th at 9 PDT, 16 GMT. So that is 5 days away. And presumably they're going to open up pre-orders, show off more of the statue, and maybe announce who the winner is. So go do that, and maybe you'll be one of the lucky ones to end up winning it before it even goes on sale.
Maybe. I'm going to just go ahead and drop a link into the chat as well for the first 4 figures site where you can enter for the giveaway. There you go. It's in the chat.
Yeah, they also have a lot of really cool statues for other games. Shovel Knight, Spyro, various Zelda statues.
Yeah. No, they make good quality stuff. Definitely. It's just expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is that.
All right, our next piece of news from Nintendo Life is a roundup of all of the indie announcements at the previous Nintendo Direct that just happened a couple of days ago, or yesterday, maybe. May 11th? Yeah, yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Did you watch it?
It was yesterday. I did watch it.
Can you fill me in about these crabs?
Well, imagine it's like what they say. It's like a Souls-like game, but but there's crabs. That's all they gave us. That's all. No, there are some really cool games announced there, but nothing that I got particularly excited for personally. I know Kayla or Tubes was talking about 𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗃, which she was seemed quite excited about. She said that game is already on another platform, maybe, or something like that, but she already knew about it. But yeah, it's cool to see it.
Were there any games you were hoping for that did not get announced?
Well, I'm always hoping for Silksong, but I did not go in at all with the expectation I would see it, to be honest, because like I guess I'm trying to be realistic. So there is that. But actually we got a super chat from Taker610. Appreciate the super chat, my friend. Thank you. They asked, is Splatoon the direct sequel to Platoon on the NES? I'm gonna say no. No. Maybe indirect sequel. Spiritual successor, maybe. No, neither. Unrelated. Thank you for the super chat, though. Taker, appreciate that.
Oh, Tube's in the chat. 𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗃.
𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗃. Yeah, 𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗃.
Yeah, so they so the list for the games coming out summer 2022, 𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗃. It says Harvest Moon meets Pokemon in weird and cute 𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗃 out on Switch this summer. 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏 Lost Haven. 𝗟𝗏𝗃𝗏 Soundfall out now. Wild Frost Winter 2022. Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, which sounds like they had their name inspired by Untitled Goose Game.
Maybe.
Gunbrella in 2023. We Are OFK this summer. Silt next month, June. Mini Motorways out now. Wayward Strand, July 21st. That's an interesting art style. Cult of the Lamb 2022. Another Crab's Treasure 2023. One Shot World Machine Edition, summer 2022. Gibbon Beyond the Trees out now. Idle Manager, August 25th. Card Shark, June 2nd. Cursed to Golf, summer 2022. A Guidebook of Babel, this autumn. Opus Echo of Starsong, Full Bloom Edition, out now. Japanese presentation Nintendo World Tract. Omari, June 2022. Undying, 2022. Super Noda Game World. Yeah, so I guess that's all of them. That is a crazy thumbnail Nintendo has there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, lots of announcements. I saw some people raging on Twitter, being like, I can't believe I woke up for this. I woke up early just for this, and this sucks, and I hate Nintendo. And I'm like, guys, this is an indie world. Like, seriously. Like, you need to know what you're going into, right? So, like, I don't know. Just, like, people were all up in arms about it, and, like, it's like, okay, you know what this presentation was. It's not like they were hyping it up as like just a general direct or misleading in any way. So I certainly don't see it as anything to get upset about. But I don't know. There was nothing really that stood out to me. 𝗏𝗏 looked 𝗏𝗏 looked kind of neat. I kind of like the puzzle concept of it. It's also pretty impressive that it was like developed by like one kid.
Interesting.
Pretty cool. Yeah, so that was neat. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, I don't know. Nothing jumped out for me, I guess. I've seen other indie worlds, and there's been like some games that I'm like, oh yeah, I need that. Skatebird, yeah. No. But yeah, no, this one is just like nothing. I don't know. It's just like nothing bad, but like nothing jumping out at me, you know? What about you, Jess? Anything there that you think?
Well, I wonder if games like Silksong they would save for the direct next month.
I think so. I think it's big enough and hyped up enough that they would. Like Silksong had, if you remember at E3 2019, when they had their little show floor demoing games, and Silksong was like right up there with the other with like.
Did we play it, or did you play it?
I didn't. No, there was the wait was too long, so I chose not to. But there was like a bunch of games there, right? And like that you could play. Aside from like Link's Awakening was that the year? Yeah, that was the year for Link's Awakening. Link's Awakening was like the big one, and then there was like a couple other sections of like Nintendo games to play. And so yeah, like I think Silksong is big enough to warrant being just in a general direct instead of an indie world. To be honest. That's just me.
All right. So our final piece of news, unless you could think of anything else, is the I don't have an article for it, but if I remember correctly, because they all basically say the same thing, Jeff Grubb, who is a person.
He is a person.
A
real one.
Mentioned that he feels it would be. He thinks Nintendo will release. Again, he thinks Nintendo will release or announce Twilight Princess HD and Metroid Prime trilogy or one HD remaster, whatever. And since Zelda got delayed and then the Metroid games did really, really well. And then he said later on that he thinks Nintendo would be stupid if they didn't do this. He didn't say that someone told him this was going to happen, or that they were going to, or it was a leak. It was just his thoughts, which he did the same thing last year, shortly after. I included the new quote from him with the screenshot and the one from last year, which he basically said the same thing, that he thinks, or he would like for Nintendo to release Twilight Princess HD. And because he said that he would like for Nintendo to do that, and that he thinks they would be stupid if they didn't, a lot of people, websites, YouTube channels, everything took that and was like, oh, this is a new rumor, this is a new leak. This person has,
as if we haven't heard it before.
This person has a leak, or he has a source stating Twilight Princess HD is coming, which is what almost every YouTube channel reported on it is like, oh, there's more rumors and leaks out there that this game's coming at the end of the year. When it's like, no, that there was just a guy with no real affiliation with Nintendo, like us, saying that he would like for the game to come out and that he thinks Nintendo might do it. Not that someone told him or whatever.
Right.
And then they just take it and they, which is what I messaged you earlier with Rick. Yeah.
To my understanding, he does sometimes have legitimate leaks or sources or whatever.
Yes. But with
that's
this
not what
one,
this was.
Yeah.
but that's not what this was. This was fully just him being like, this is what I think will happen.
Yeah, and
to his credit, he's pretty good about saying deliberately which it is, if it's just his own thoughts or if it's like a source that he has. So keep that in mind.
There was another leaker who I made a video on. He was talking about Ocarina of Time coming out or something, and I made a video that was talking about it, and someone tagged them on Twitter and was like, hey, Jesse made a video that you said that you heard that blah 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 is coming out, and then he said, no, I didn't say that I knew it was coming out or that it was a leak or whatever. I was just saying that I think Nintendo should do it, or I would like it to, which was not at all what he said. So he like went back on what you could literally hear him saying in the thing, and then all the websites had the quote where he was saying that he knew that it was coming out. And then like he went back on it in the thing when someone asked him about it. And then once again he went back on it like a third time and went back to his original statement when the N64 stuff came out.
Right.
So yeah, it's weird keeping track of all these. But that's what I messaged you earlier and was like, oh, there's a bunch of really nice comments on the Twilight Princess video about the rumor. Because instead of being like, oh my god, there's a new rumor coming out, how exciting is this? I can't wait for the game to come out if it's true, blah, blah, blah. Like a lot of channels, we tried, like, we look at the quote from the person, what it says, what Nintendo's been saying or doing in interviews, if any of the studios could possibly be working on the remake. And then like, if are there past quotes from this person saying stuff might come out that never did? Or do they have a history of like a different person who every 6 months was like Wind Waker Twilight Princess collection coming out? If you remember that. So yeah, like we try to,
you know, you're always still gonna have those people who are like, stop perpetuating these rumors, and
yeah, well, that's what I was
even though
that's what I was expecting on the video, was just everyone being like, oh my god, another stupid Twilight Princess rumor, stop talking about this. Which yeah, I totally agree, but when I do the videos of them, it's not just reinstating and supporting the rumor, it's trying to like actually look at it. So there's a bunch of really nice comments. It's like, anytime I see a rumor come out, I always come and look at you because or whatever. And it was like the nicest comments ever, which made my day a lot better because I was expecting the exact opposite.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, it's good. It's like, because it is kind of a testament to the video itself, like, and your approach to it is more, you're not just like, it's not like needless hype for hype's sake, for click's sake. It's like actually thinking it through, and critical thinking. It's important.
Critical thinking,
which is not what I'm doing right now because I'm having trouble forming a sentence. So
yeah. So just the idea of Twilight Princess HD coming to Switch, the potential for a Zelda game to fall into the end of the year slot that could be possibly announced next month at their big direct. Do you think there are chances of that? It has been like 2019 was the last Tantalus Zelda game, so what have they been working on for the past 3 or 4 years? No, that was Grezzo.
No, Grezzo did.
Yeah. And then
Tantalus did Skyward Sword HD last year. And
then even with them like coming off of Skyward Sword HD, even if they took a month or two as a break, which game studios don't do, they immediately start on their next thing. But they would have enough time to port either Wind Waker or Twilight Princess from the Wii U to the Switch, because it would only take a few months. And there's also people who think Nintendo may have done this themselves when they were just crazy rushing out ports or definitive editions of almost all of their Wii U games. Because
the thing is with Twilight Princess HD though, specifically, well, and I guess actually it's Twilight Princess or Wind Waker, either one, because these rumors tend to come hand in hand for both those games. There's not much work that needs doing. Like, most of the work is already done for the Wii U version. And so, yeah, it's just Like, it wouldn't take long to crank it out if they haven't already done it and are just sitting on it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So, do you expect anything Zelda related at June's Direct? I almost said E3 Direct. I guess it's more of a Summerfest Direct.
It's Summer Games Fest Direct. Yeah, I don't see why not. You know, like it just they've been explicit about wanting something Zelda every year. They've been doing that every year for like a while. And their big Zelda title this year, gone. It's delayed. So yeah, like I just I don't see why not. It just makes the most sense.
Yeah. So
yeah,
one of the comments.
Not saying necessarily that it's gonna 100% be Twilight Princess though. Like there's totally other games that it could be.
So
yeah, sorry, Justin.
No, you're good. I was just gonna. This is an example of one of the comments I was talking about. From Gilligan Kruger said, I've seen a couple of channels that report on potential Zelda remakes, but I feel yours is approaching said topic in the most analytical and research-based way. Personally, I've been hoping for, and he just goes on saying they liked it, but it's comments like that, or this one from a different Daniel. Must be one of your clones.
My alt accounts now.
Said, every time a wild rumor about Wind Waker HD or any other Zelda remake port is viral, I immediately come to this channel to balance my hype since in my opinion, the only reliable and realistic source. Which is not true. We're not the only source, but I famously hate clickbait or rumors or whatever. Like whenever we did the theory list videos.
Right.
Or misinformation in the Zelda community. So that's why I would probably get a lot more views if I just posted hype videos for every rumor that comes out. But
for sure.
Yeah. I think Twilight Princess has a chance of coming out, but I wonder if do you think they would go with Wind Waker HD first, since that was the way? Like, I think we both agree it wouldn't come out as a dual release.
Oh yeah, I don't think so at all. Nintendo is definitely gonna charge you full price for each one, and I think just Nintendo values their 3D Zelda games as full priced games. That's just how they see the value of it. So yeah, I don't know though. Like I think Twilight Princess or Wind Waker are probably some of the more likely candidates. But it wouldn't be my first pick personally. Just because I think there's other games that could benefit more from a remake.
Majora's Mask?
No.
give it a proper remake.
A real. No, I was thinking more like the Oracle games, A Link Between Worlds, Minish Cap.
Yeah, so those would be
any of those games.
I think those would be more in line with Grezzo. For
sure. And Grezzo hasn't released anything Zelda in a while.
Whereas if Tantalus did release something that they started after Skyward Sword, which they started Skyward Sword after Twilight Princess, it usually takes them, like they said, it took a year and a half for Twilight Princess, because there's only like 40 people on their team. And
right.
With Link's Awakening, how long was that in between? Link's Awakening was 2019.
Right.
Twilight Princess was
2016.
16?
Twilight Princess HD was 2016, yeah.
So yeah, about 2.5 years, I guess, to finish Link's Awakening.
Well, no, because Link's Awakening was Grezzo. Twilight Princess HD was Tantalus.
Yeah. I'm stupid. Right. Forgive me.
No, it's okay. It's just.
So what was before Link's Awakening? It was that was Majora's Mask.
3D would have been.
And then they helped on Triforce Heroes, I think.
I think so.
Which was around the same time as Twilight Princess. So it still would have been like 2.5 to 3 years.
Hold up. Okay. So Grezzo, Ocarina of Time, and Four Swords Anniversary Edition in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Street Pass Garden in 2013. Okay, then. Not even... You got 2015, they worked on Majora's Mask 3D, and they assisted with Triforce Heroes. Then they did a couple other games like Ever Oasis, Luigi's Mansion, which was, I think, the first game got its remake for 3DS.
Mm-hmm.
Then Link's Awakening in 2019, and then Miitopia last year.
So when was Luigi's Mansion? Because
that was 2018.
I assume that would have been the Zelda team, since it was another big Mario or big Nintendo IP.
Yeah, I imagine so.
Because they have like their main team basically that does all of the big Nintendo ports, and then they have the smaller teams that do like Miitopia or ports for like PlayStation 4 and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like it's either way, it's been like 3-4 years or whatever. So they've been working on something. What is it?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if Tantalus was working on anything, then it would need to be something that they could finish in like a year's time, basically, if it were to be announced, which would realistically only be Switch ports of the Wii U Zelda games, since they would take like maybe 3 or 4 months to do.
Right. I think also it's worth noting, and a lot of people are like, get confused about this maybe, but like they don't like, okay, just as an example, I got into a conversation with someone on Twitter about this. Twitter's not exactly like the intellectual center of the arts, but like they don't take breaks between games. Like it's not like they will wait. A game's announcement doesn't mean that's when it starts development. So for example, I remember talking on Twitter about Breath of the Wild sequel being delayed, that kind of thing, and someone was like, well, it's only been in development since 2019, and I was like, no. What do you mean? And they're like, well, because they announced it's now in development. That means they just started development in 2019. And I'm like, no. First of all, they actually, in Creating a Champion,
Mm-hmm.
the book,
yes,
in an interview, there's like interviews at the back end of the book with a bunch of the lead people, art director Aonuma, Fujibayashi, and they confirm in that book, which came out in what, 2018?
Yeah, it was around the time the DLC released.
Yeah, in that book, it actually says they've already begun work on the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And also Nintendo, what do you think they do? They just like release the game and then they sit around and twiddle their thumbs for a year and they're like, should we make another game? I don't know. This one's selling well. Like, no, they finish one project, then they move on to the next, because that's how day jobs work.
Yeah.
You know, same thing at your day job, I'm sure. So, you know, just think about it. You don't just finish one project at work and then just like call it, all right, that was a good year, guys. Well, I'll be back next year to start on my next one. Anyway, so keep that in mind, folks. That they're
I actually have it right
they're working
here.
on something. They're working on something.
I took the page from Creating a Champion where it literally says that the next Zelda has already begun.
Yeah.
And technically, with Zelda games at least, they actually usually start development before the previous game even releases, because it usually begins with ideas or concepts that went unused in the previous game. And with Breath of the Wild 2 especially, they talked about how they had ideas for the base game that didn't make it, that they thought about including in as DLC, but then there's so much of it that they couldn't fit it in as DLC. So then they separated the larger changes that would have been brought to the DLC and the smaller changes, and they released the smaller changes as the Breath of the Wild DLC, and then kept the bigger updates for Breath of the Wild 2. So technically, Breath of the Wild 2 is based off of ideas and stuff that came up with probably in the middle or even beginning of Breath of the Wild's development. So technically, that game, you could say, started development years before Breath of the Wild 1 even released.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, my main point bringing that up was just that, like, sure, 𝗏𝗏 released a game last year, and they haven't announced anything, but that doesn't mean they're not working on something. And since, like, half of their releases are Zelda remakes, the other half are like other remakes and also 𝗏𝗏oasis. Then they're bound to be working on some remake or another. It just makes sense.
Yeah, they also have that article, or not article. It was a job listing they had where they were trying to hire for a Zelda game, and they specifically mentioned the Unity engine, which Link's Awakening was developed. It began with them experimenting and testing out both engines, and they ended up going with Unreal Engine 4, which didn't work out at all. So now they switched to Unity, which they hired for, and they were doing like a medieval adventure game, which they were hiring for, which if everyone remembers the interviews or the guest episodes we've had with Joe or Patricia or any of the other voice actors from Breath of the Wild, that's literally the same thing that they were told when they were auditioning for Breath of the Wild, was that they're not auditioning for Zelda or a specific game, it's just a medieval adventure Middle-earth type game. And it's curious that 𝗏𝗏 literally used the same wording to describe it.
That's a good point.
But yeah, if there was a game coming out, it wouldn't be from Nintendo, I don't think.
No, I think it
would be Tantalus, 𝗏𝗏, or so like Tantalus or 𝗏𝗏. If Tantalus came out with something, it would just be a simple port, I think. I don't imagine they would be able to fully remake anything in just a year. And with 𝗏𝗏, if they came out with something, it would probably be like Ocarina of Oracles or Minish Cap, I guess.
Maybe.
Because they would have had enough time to do it. So, yeah, the potential's there.
Minish Cap would be great.
Yeah, Minish Cap would be. Someone commented on a video earlier, it was like, oh, Nintendo can't do anything with Minish Cap because Capcom owns it. And I just linked to the one video that I made where it talked about, Flagship. I was going to say Black Flag. Flagship, where it was like a mix of Capcom, Sega, and Nintendo. And then basically all the people that were in charge of the Capcom Zelda games, Nintendo just hired anyways. So we have the lead developer or the director of Minish Cap, who went on to Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks and Skyward Sword, and now he's in charge of like all the Breath of the Wild games. So, yeah. And they already re-released Minish Cap on the Wii U, and it was included in that 3DS Ambassador thing, as well as they had 𝗏𝗏 already remaster one of Capcom's Zelda games with the Four Swords Anniversary Edition that they added online multiplayer to. So, yeah, just do that again with Four Swords Adventures.
Give us online play with it.
Yeah.
There you go. Perfect.
All right. I think we thoroughly explained it. Like the potential of, like, is it possible they announce something next month? Yes. Is it possible something releases this year? Yes. We talked about which games it would have to be if it was from Tantalus, which ones it would have to be if it was from 𝗏𝗏. Both of them have had enough time to finish a game and even start half of the work on a different one. So yeah, I think we're good. Is it time for questions, I assume? Oh, no, a quick update for all of the big Daniel stands out there. Metroid. You know the story. Metroid Dread has outsold Metroid Prime.
Yes.
Do you think that has potential to encourage Nintendo to do something with the Metroid games?
I mean, I think it just proves. So there's some interviews with Yoshio Sakamoto where he's talking about wanting to get Dread going for so many years, right? And basically Nintendo was like, don't know if we can commit the resources to it. Don't know if there's enough interest, there's enough of a market for it. And he basically was like, hey, look what all these indie developers are doing with this genre that we basically are responsible for inventing. Like there's a market for this.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, okay. And they let him make Dread with Mercury Steam. And
do you remember the reason Mercury Steam
really the clip notes here
first canceled Metroid Dread when it was on 3DS?
Sorry?
They
weren't involved until Samus Returns.
Which studio was doing Metroid Dread? And then it got canceled.
Nintendo was.
Okay.
But to my knowledge,
I thought it was Mercury's.
It was very early in development.
Yeah.
Like they didn't have gameplay to show at any point.
Yeah, it's just odd they would be
Sakamoto. I think Dread's sales performing well is just more proof that there's a market for it, to Sakamoto's point. And so, yeah, I could definitely see it being encouraging to Nintendo that, like, yeah, there's a market for this. People are interested in this series. New people that haven't, been with the series the whole time are launching in now. That kind of thing, right? So it's like, if anything, it's definitely incentive for them to explore the series more, and yeah, I think it's good news for Metroid fans like me.
Mm-hmm.
Good news, Metroid fans.
Now I know
and Metroid fans.
I really hate to bring this up and do this to you on the spot in front of everyone, but recently you had your fallout with Miyamoto.
Why you always gotta hit me right in the emotions bringing that up?
Yeah, so with your friendship with him, you don't have to tell us if he was the one who may have informed you or if you just came upon the knowledge yourself, but using the common sense you possess and not just saying, I hope Metroid Prime Trilogy gets remastered, like a bunch of people seem to be doing. With Metroid Dread doing really well, Samus Returns doing well on the 3DS, Metroid Prime 4 being the most hyped game aside from Breath of the Wild 2. If we did see a Metroid game this year or next year or just sometime before Metroid Prime 4 comes out, what do you think it could be? If we were to get one, would it be Samus Returns HD? Would it be a remake of like the GBA game or the DS game or the trilogy remastered or a full remake of Metroid Prime? Like, which direction do you think they would go in? Because I think Metroid Dread outselling Metroid Prime, which was previously thought of as one of their best. Sorry for interrupting.
Go ahead.
But yeah, where Metroid Prime, like that was the one that everyone sort of most new fans fell in love with the Metroid series because of that game and then went back and played the older ones. And with Dread outselling Metroid Prime and getting really good reviews, I think it is incentive for Nintendo to give fan, as the way Reggie said it that one year at E3 when they announced Metroid Prime Federation Force. We know what the Metroid fans want and we are working on it. Whatever that he was referring to? Because nothing's still come out. Unless it was Dread, I don't know.
I assume Samus Returns was what he was referring to.
Yeah, maybe.
But I mean, maybe. But
yeah, it's yeah. What do you think they would realistically put out for this?
Okay, well, I'll say like on the Prime front of things that like a full HD remake's not necessary.
Federation Force
really
HD.
Just need to up-res. They just need to up-res the Prime trilogy. And there's a few textures and stuff that might need a bit of a touch-up.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I recently replayed the Prime trilogy on my streams. Shameless plug. I stream games. And honestly, they look great. These are games that are like 15 to 20 years old, and they still look great, which is kind of surprising. But yeah, so they don't need to do much. They could just do a very quick and easy up-res, maybe touch up some lighting and a few textures, put it out there. It's good. Truly, I believe that. But I will say that a more interesting answer is a remake of Metroid Fusion.
Mm.
The reason
GBA
I bring
game.
this up is because, yeah, it was a GBA game. The reason I bring this up is because Mercury Steam, when they initially started working on Samus Returns, they actually wanted to do a remake of Fusion. And Sakamoto said, no, Fusion is fine. We'll leave it be. But
wait, this was before they started working on
that actually.
So it was Samus Returns.
Samus Returns.
Okay.
Yeah, they wanted to do Fusion, and Sakamoto said no, because actually Metroid 2 is the game of the series that needs a remake the most. Which is correct, actually. It definitely was the game that needs a remake the most, or needed. Now we have both the official and a really good fan remake, but at the time, you know, that was like the least accessible of the Metroid series. And the thing is too, is like story-wise, because a Metroid, unlike Zelda, Metroid has like an interconnected story, like that spans games, like the sequels play into each other. So
pinball.
And pinball. But yeah, anyway, so Metroid 2 is a pretty pivotal part of the Metroid chronology. It's a pretty important story like for the story of the series as a whole. And so it was the right call to remake it. But now that they've done that, they've remade Metroid 2 per Sakamoto's wishes. They've made Dread also per Sakamoto's desire to get Dread made, which he's been wanting to make for like 15 years. Now what? My thought is now maybe, you know, they've won the good favor of Nintendo and of Yoshio Sakamoto. Maybe they get to do the project they want to do now, which maybe it's still remaking Fusion like they wanted to do in the first place. And if you ask me, that would be awesome, because Fusion is a great and underrated game. So it'd be really cool. That's all. That's my thoughts. That would be my pick.
I see.
But I mean, honestly, any Metroid game is good Metroid game. Let's be honest. So
yeah. So I actually found the interview you referenced where they mentioned Metroid Dread or Metroid.
Fusion.
Yes, Fusion. So this says in 2015, it was reported that Mercury Steam was actively interested in pitching a new Metroid game to Nintendo.
Mm-hmm.
Is this where I got Dread from? That I thought it was... No. It says Mercury Steam has been working on a Metroid prototype for Wii U and 3DS. Interesting. A Wii U Metroid game would have been cool.
You know what that is actually? Is Samus Returns.
Samus Returns for the Wii U?
I think they began for Wii U, and then they were talking about putting it on Switch, but then Nintendo was like, well, we're not sure how it's gonna do or how it's gonna sell or whatever. So they kind of moved it to 3DS as like way to play it safe because they weren't sure how it was gonna do on Switch. And it was like less resource and time consuming to develop for 3DS basically.
Yeah, this says they pitched
So-
for the Wii U. It was going to be cross-platform for the Wii U and 3DS.
Right. I honestly think they should have just like it came out in late 2017. Personally, in hindsight, I think they should have just put it on Switch instead of 3DS. But we can't have it all.
It says
Can't.
one of the ideas they pitched was similar to Metroid Prime Hunters. I thought the game they pitched was Dread, and they were working on it, and then it got canceled.
No, Mercury Steam was not involved with Metroid until Samus Returns. But like Sakamoto was trying to get Dread going. He started it for like the DS or whatever, and then he tried again later. And it got canceled again. So but to pivot this conversation slightly, we have a super chat from Vernon. Will Samus ever be a playable character in Mario Kart? I don't think so, personally. But it'd be cool. You could put anyone in Mario Kart. I'm fine with it. So that'd be cool. What do you think?
I think they should keep the Mario Kart name and title, but make it more of like a Smash Bros. Celebration of gaming. Because like you already have Splatoon, Mii's, Link, all these different people. So why not? Like, why stop at Splatoon and Link? Why not come out with...
And Animal Crossing.
Yeah, Animal Crossing as well. So why not put the other people in? Like,
good question.
It's because there was the leak a while back talking about Mario Kart 9 or 10 or whatever they would have ended up calling it. And that was kind of the idea behind it, that they were coming up with a new idea for it, which is the dumbest thing ever, because each Mario game has a new idea behind it. That's like the concept. Like one introduced the paragliders. One had like introduced motorcycles and stuff. 8 introduced the anti-gravity thing. So it's like, where can you go from there? Where you already have almost every past course remade. You have a bunch of new courses. You have a bunch of the characters that people like. Like, if you put out another one, how could you legitimately convince someone to buy Mario Kart 9 as opposed to just getting 8 with the amazing amount of content that's in it? And I think the only way would be to offer those random Nintendo characters that didn't make it in. Like with Koei Tecmo, I think they have the Mario Kart arcade machines, which has characters like Pac-Man and other people in it, and it's a collaboration with Koei Tecmo and Nintendo. They're the ones who worked on that the VR Mario Kart game. I think they also worked on the VR Luigi's Mansion game, and probably helping out with the weird Mario Kart VR thing that they have at the Super Nintendo World thing. So
I know.
yeah, it's like they have non-Nintendo console Mario Kart games that does have characters outside of Nintendo in it. And I think that's the only way they could go forward. Because what are they going to do? Remake all the past levels again? Like, Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
But maybe in adventure mode, like that Diddy Kong Racing. Anyways, the Metroid thing. Trying to find. Also, is there any questions in the chat? We're in the Zelda mailbag section.
Yeah, we haven't done any questions. We should. Hang on here. I'm just gonna scroll through.
Okay, while you're doing that, this says Metroid Dread was first announced in the June 2005 issue of Game Informer, and further 2005. Wow. And further details emerged on the magazine's online forums. According to the forum moderators, the game was a 2D side-scroller being developed for the Nintendo DS, with its plot following the events of Metroid Fusion. Does Dread follow Fusion?
Yes.
Okay.
Very so.
In September 19, 2005, IGN reported that Metroid Dread was being developed but would not be formally announced for some time. Nintendo had neither confirmed nor denied its existence, like they do with everything. On February 17, 2000, when they do come out and deny something, then you know that's a clear sign that they are making it or they are doing it.
Right.
Official Nintendo magazine listed Metroid Dread as having possible release date in November 2006. So after Nintendo denies it, Nintendo's official magazine announces the game to possibly release in November.
Yeah.
Again, however, on March 16th, 2006, so like 6 months before it was to release, in the second issue of the magazine, the game was marked with a vague 2006 release date. It was also listed for the release in 2006 in the April, May, June 2006 issue, but it disappeared. Currently lurking behind a dark veil of mystery, Metroid Dread looks set to be a 2D Metroid game created specifically for the DS and its capabilities. We're hoping to hear the first solid information at the E3 game show in May. Watch this. Where was it canceled? Apparently Metroid 3 Corruption had references to Dread.
That's not actually true.
Do you know
there is
what I'm referring to?
Okay, so yeah, so in Metroid Prime 3, there's in all the Metroid Prime games, there's all these like scan terminals, like you can scan like different terminals and read information. And one of them makes reference saying, it says Metroid Project Dread is nearing completion. And everyone assumes that means, oh, they were actually hinting that Dread was almost done, that it was almost finished. This is not the case, though. First of all, right next to it is another panel that says that Metroid Project Dread has failed, and there is that. But apparently, I think Did You Know Gaming actually is the one that did this, but they got in touch with the people at Retro Studios who worked on that and put that in the game. And for one thing, Nintendo didn't tell them anything about Dread, so it was not a hint about Metroid Dread because Retro Studios didn't know what Nintendo was doing with Metroid Dread. Instead, it was actually an in-universe fictional project that the bad guys were working on that didn't actually work out. And it just, the name happened to be a coincidence, basically. But this shouldn't be too surprising because Nintendo is known for keeping their cards close to their chest, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Retro Studios couldn't have hinted at Nintendo's because the 2D Metroid games are developed in-house at Nintendo, except for Dread, which was Mercury Steam. But before that, it was all in-house.
There's an interview here where the lead director, the guy in charge of the retro Metroid Prime games, said that he was not. He used the word privy. He was not privy to privy to any 2D Zelda games
or
being made.
Metroid games.
Yeah, I said Zelda.
That's my point, is that they couldn't have been hinting at anything because they didn't know. They didn't know what Nintendo was doing with the 2D series. So there's that. Yeah. So it's actually just a coincidence that everyone overanalyzed and overthought about. So it actually meant nothing.
To wrap that up, it looks like it started and ended, or it was originally meant to release at the end of 2006, but was shelved And then 2008, an updated version, or a demo for an updated version of it was shown off to Nintendo staff at E3. And then nothing else was done with it. And then in 2010 to 2018, they had the idea to give it to Mercury Steam.
Yeah, what I will say is worth doing is Did You Know Gaming has a very fantastic video all about the development history of Dread. So if anyone is curious about all of these details and stuff like that, just I would say watch that video. It covers it all. It's really in depth and detailed and interesting. Actually, it's a game that has a very long development history spanning like 15 years. So worth the watch. But that said, should we move on to some
questions? Do you have the first question?
Yeah, so this actually comes from Kirby Warrior in the chat. Question was, what kind of gameplay do you suspect will revolve around the Master Sword and Link's arm? Does it hint to any story elements? So I think the answer is yes, it does hint to story elements. We see in one trailer Link's arm get like Malice crawl up it while he's holding the Master Sword. Then we see in a couple instances he's got this new magic hand thing happening, and the almost melted Master Sword. So I think it hints at Ganondorf being just a cunning strategist, if anything, for the sequel at least. So yeah, I think I'm not sure. Obviously, I don't know what the game's whole story will be, but I do think that repairing the Master Sword is going to play a big part in it. And I think the hand is basically going to be our replacement for the Sheikah Slate, because we don't seem to have that in the sequel.
Mm-hmm.
But we still need to be able to do things. So that's my thought. What do you think, Jesse?
Yeah, I made a video a week or two ago sort of talking about ideas and stuff based off of the concept artwork, which has him with the broken sword and then his hands fully taken over. But there are some ideas in there that obviously didn't make it, like him having the mask and his leg being corrupted as well. But it had the idea of his hand controlling a beetle type thing, which was later moved to the Sheikah Slate and then ultimately removed from the game. The same with it had a hookshot thing. The idea that I suggested, since it seems to be more magic based, whereas the concept art was more technology based. I could see in the same way a boomerang or something would work to reach out, grab items and come back. I imagine he would be able to do something like that where he projects the spirit hand out and grabs onto something, and then he can just pull it back to him or pull himself towards it, since we know from the trailer it is strong enough to catch him when he's falling and pull him up.
Right.
So you would imagine it would be able to do the same thing to other things. Almost not entirely the same, but similar to this hair, the way she uses it. It literally turns into a hand sometimes. But with the sword, I think whatever it is on his hand is there to keep the malice that corrupted the Master Sword and broke it, also corrupted his arm. And then I used the example of Dumbledore in the Harry Potter movie, when he puts on the ring and then it slowly curses him to where he's going to die, and Snape does the protection thing to where it curses him or poisons him slower. So I imagine that bracelet thing he has on is something similar to that, where it's just keeping the malice from spreading to the rest of his body or damaging him even more. And because the Master Sword still has malice on it, I would imagine he wouldn't really be able to touch it or hold it unless he did have something protecting his hand, because anytime you step in malice, even if it's just a little bit, it takes away parts. So Yeah.
Right.
And then I think similar to Skyward Sword or even Wind Waker, I think you'll just be taking the Master Sword around, powering it up, slowly getting rid of the malice by the gods or goddesses or the dragons or whoever ends up doing it in this game. And as you...
And also, just as a... Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good.
You were talking about, like, powering up the sword and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Fujibayashi is returning as director, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And he loves games with that. Like, he worked on Minish Cap, which story falls around, like, building, like, rebuilding and tempering the sword. And then he worked on Skyward Sword, which infamously is all about doing just that, tempering up, improving this sword.
Doesn't
and then
Phantom Hourglass improve the sword
you have,
as well?
In Breath of the Wild, you have Trial of the Sword to power up the Master Sword. So it's like his special treat, his specialty, his special flavor is the Fujibayashi special flair is repairing and or powering up your sword. It's his signature, apparently.
Does Phantom Hourglass allow you to upgrade the sword?
No, you get the broken Phantom Sword and then you have to rebuild it, though. So the story does have that.
Okay. Just not the Master Sword.
It's not the Master Sword,
and
though. No,
he worked on that game as well.
Caps wasn't either, though. But yeah, so I mean, just putting that out there. Fujibayashi loves making swords. So
yeah. And I think...
He loves it.
I do think traditional, or at least more traditional style dungeons will come back. Because Nintendo always does the thing to where they take whatever the biggest requests were after the previous game and try to implement that into the new one. That's how we got Twilight Princess from Wind Waker, and then Skyward Sword from Twilight Princess, and then Breath of the Wild from Skyward Sword. So they do have a history of listening to fans, and it is something that a lot of fans asked. But I think what they could do is similar to getting the runes at the beginning of the game.
Right.
With the Sheikah Slate, you get the different powers and stuff. What'll basically end up being the runes for your hand. Because we see it glow whenever he reverses time. He can, like, go through puddles in the ceiling, apparently.
Right.
And who knows what other crazy stuff they have. Have you heard the people who had the idea that the water drop we see is a way, like a new way to teleport without the Sheikah Slate?
Oh no, I hadn't.
I don't.
But that makes some sense, actually.
Does it?
Like just the animation of his warping. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think it's related to the ability to like phase through the ceiling, just because there was like Nintendo had actually put out the patent for that game mechanic, and it doesn't involve the water droplet at all, from as far as I can tell. It's more that animation of Link doing like that dive upwards into the air, like we see in the trailer. But there's a whole, like the patent even talks about like the visual of it, even like how there'll be like pillar of light that shines around Link as you charge it up or aim it or whatever, and then the game, will measure like the distance and see if you're able to do the ability or not, that kind of thing. It's a really interesting concept, but yeah, I don't think it's related to that little water droplet thing. But Link's hand does glow, like his whole arm glows when he's doing that move. So I do think that, yeah, that's why I do think as well, like that it'll be tied to, or not tied to, but sorry, like a replacement for the Sheikah Slate, because we don't have it anymore. So the arm does all our abilities instead.
And we see it does have different glows. Like it has the green glow and then the yellow glow or the golden glow, where presumably the was it the light Link's in front of? A lot of people assume that might be Zelda communicating with Link, and then it's showing up as that glowing light. And his hand glows that golden color, the same as the little orb in front of him, which it also glows the same color when he does the time reversal thing. But then he has a green glow around him when he's jumping through the little puddles in the ceiling or whatever it is and swimming through. And then the green glow also, the first time we seen it was when he lifts his hand up in that first trailer to presumably give someone a high five.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, he's holding down Ganondorf for catching Zelda or something. Who knows what he's doing?
Who knows?
Maybe Zelda falls and he reverses time and brings her back. Like, it'd just be that simple. Since he can apparently reverse time, so why not do that? Anyways, yeah, that's what I think is going to happen. And then as you beat, like Skyward Sword, you beat the dungeon to get the power that upgrades the sword. But inside the dungeon is the item that you get. So in a similar way, instead of a dungeon item, you get a new ability for your hand. You get cool new ways to give people handshakes. And then once you complete the dungeon, the sword is repaired slightly. And then it's that process over again, like they did in Skyward Sword. Or even Breath of the Wild, you beat the dungeon or the divine beasts, and then you get abilities. Like you have the 𝗙liche abilities, and then you have the champion abilities. And I think it's a similar thing where we have these, whatever the golden abilities are, and then whatever these green abilities are.
Yeah.
So,
fair.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I think we've covered it pretty thoroughly.
All right, we can do 3 more questions really quick.
Okay. Well, here's one from Envy in the chat here. Do you guys think the possibility 𝗙 was meant, or what do you get? I can't read it right. I'm sorry. What do you guys think about the possibility 𝗙 was meant to be part of the Twilight Princess 2 project, but then she was ultimately repurposed into the origin story in Skyward Sword? So what's interesting about that idea, which actually I've never considered before, is that the very first artwork ever shown for Skyward Sword, you know the one I'm talking about, where like standing dramatically, hands out, but he's not holding a sword, and then 𝗙 is like behind him. That's drawn almost in the Twilight Princess art style, but it was I guess it was early stages of Skyward Sword.
I say it is Twilight Princess.
Oh.
Like I say the art style is Twilight Princess, is all.
Oh, the art style. Yeah. It's totally like, yeah, it could go. Like if you look at like some of the like the
I have it
box
here
art,
for everyone
like,
who wants to look at the screen.
Princess back in the day.
Sorry.
It's got that like very edgy pencil hand drawn art style. And Skyward Sword's art style is more painterly, if that makes sense. So, especially its promotional art. So yeah, I think that's an interesting thought. It's possible.
Yeah.
Possible.
Yeah, I think where this is, because it just says The Legend of Zelda, I think the idea for this, because I look at it and it does look like a painted version of Twilight Princess, to where like it still has the darker, more detailed colors, where Skyward Sword's more of a cel shaded painted look instead of like a dark detailed paint look. And the sword's missing, but 𝗙's there, who people
He doesn't have his baggy pants though.
No, so I think this may have been created when Skyward Sword was just Twilight Princess 2, and then they ended up breaking a small part of the team off to make crossbow training, because everyone wanted crossbow training as opposed to Twilight Princess 2. And then we got Skyward Sword. Instead of making a sequel, they did a new game and the spin-off. But I think this artwork may have come from around the time when it was still in that Twilight Princess sequel phase. Or maybe they had the idea to just keep a similar art style as Twilight Princess, since it was the best-selling game, but then they just decided to change it again.
Even like Link's, I'm looking at the artwork now, like even Link's face there, like he looks like Twilight Princess Link's face. Like Skyward Sword Link has like has a different face. I don't know how else to describe it.
Interestingly, this Link is also right-handed.
Well, I guess they were wanting to go in on the motion controls with it, right? But
yeah.
That's a good point. That he's right-handed. Because Twilight Princess Link canonically, and in all the promotional art and stuff, is actually still left-handed.
Yeah. But maybe it was a thing where it was being made for the Wii, and the Wii version of Twilight Princess, he was right-handed, so they just went with it.
Right. So they were just continuing with that. It's interesting is how much of 𝗙's design is finalized here, basically.
Yeah,
like,
people thought she was...
Like, the proportions are a little different, but she pretty much looks like how she looks in the game. Or, like, design-wise, like, overall.
I think people originally thought she was, like, one of the goddess fairies, or whatever they're called. Fairy Queen.
The Great Fairy. Yeah, because she looks a lot like... That's, like, the Wind Waker design for Great Fairy is are really similar.
But people...
To this one.
Obviously, they picked out her design being similar to the Master Sword, and then Link's sword being missing in the game. So they seem to have this idea for a while before Skyward Sword became what it is today. But there was something I was going to say, but I forgot what it was. Oh well. Yeah, so the original question, 𝗙 in Breath of the Wild.
The original question was if 𝗙 was meant for Twilight Princess sequel initially.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's basically what I was saying. So...
Yeah.
Yeah, it probably was an idea that they came up with and then just kept it. So, it was an interesting question. I'd never thought about that either.
I never considered it, but like, legit.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say now. With Link being right-handed, I think it's either in creating a champion or just a normal interview with some website, but it was the lead artist who Nintendo asked to come up with the first concepts for like a new art style or whatever for Link in Breath of the Wild. So he was coming up with all these different art styles for Link, and he was asked about when he did the art style, did he know that Nintendo traditionally has Link left-handed, and then with Breath of the Wild, it continues on from like Skyward Sword and the Wii version of Twilight Princess where he's right-handed. And he's like, how did you think of a way, or did they tell you that they wanted you to draw him with left or right-handed? And he said that it was a complete accident. He meant to draw him left-handed.
Oh.
And then just forgot. And I guess like he just looked at the previous game, Skyward Sword, and was like, okay, it's right-handed Link. And then he was like really worried about it when he went to show it off, because he thought Nintendo would be like, Link's supposed to be left-handed. But he said Nintendo they didn't really care. They were just like, oh, that looks good.
Looks good. Looks good.
So Link could possibly be right-handed. This is stretching that interview. But I love the idea that Link is right-handed in Breath of the Wild because the original art director just messed up.
No, I mean, I think they already probably planned to.
Yeah. So it was a happy accident.
It's just like happy accident, yeah.
Just reverse the image. They'll never know.
Yeah.
So the next question I can pick here.
Yes.
Sorry, we already answered that person. Natsu had a question, but it wasn't a good question. So even though you're a Patreon, sorry.
Oh no!
Because it's about tacos. Is it soft shell or hard shell taco?
Okay.
I had tacos earlier.
Soft shell all the way, baby.
Yeah.
Soft shell all the way.
Do you see any good questions? Also, I think we can go ahead and say something. No,
yeah, sure,
never mind. It is about next week, but it ruins the whole idea behind it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Good.
This one's actually in the Discord. Justin, who's also one of the old Patreon peeps. Mailbag. 2-part question. Do you think Majora is stronger than Ganondorf? And do you think the Fierce Deity mask would make it even easier to beat Ganondorf if Link had that mask against him? Okay, so here's my 2-part answer, or several part answer. Do I think Majora is stronger than Ganondorf? Yes and no. Ganondorf pre-obtaining the Triforce. Yes, Majora is more powerful. Ganondorf after finding Triforce of Power or getting his hands on it, more powerful than Majora. That's my answer for that part, I think. But as far as
when do you count Ganondorf getting the Triforce of Power?
In Ocarina of Time. Or Twilight Princess, actually.
What about Wind Waker? Does he get it?
In Wind Waker, he has it from when he got it in Ocarina of Time.
But isn't the child timeline...
In the child timeline, the reason he has it is because of the ending of Ocarina of Time. Link goes back in time to before Ganondorf got the Triforce. But he brings back with him the Triforce of Courage that he had manifested in himself.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, the Triforce split and went to its respective owners and resided in them and was passed down until Twilight Princess. So Ganondorf got his, which we see in the botched execution flashback of Twilight Princess. And that's also why Link and Zelda of Twilight Princess already have their pieces of the Triforce at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
And so, so in that timeline, Ganondorf gets it, ironically, because of the Hero of Time. Actually, in all timelines, he gets it because of the Hero of Time. But at a slightly different point. But as far as the Fierce Deity mask thing goes, I would say no, because the Fierce Deity mask is like basically not divine. It does okay, I need to back up. And the only things capable of killing Ganondorf are weapons of divine power. So the Master Sword, which is literally blessed by the gods.
The fishing pole.
Tempered in the flames of the 3 old gods and then blessed by the goddess Hylia.
The fishing
capable
pole.
of killing Ganondorf. Not capable of killing Ganondorf, only distract you. Fishing pole is not sacred enough. But light arrows use sacred energy. Silver arrows presumably are basically just light arrows.
Yeah, from like Zelda.
So
and
only
stuff.
weapons of divine energy, which I do not believe the Fierce Deity mask uses. I think it's a more something darker. So I do not think the Fierce Deity mask, while still being extremely powerful, I don't think it's the right type of powerful to kill Ganondorf. Maybe seal him, maybe best him in combat, but not kill him. That's my big brain answer.
Yeah,
Any thoughts?
We don't see Ganondorf like pulling a moon towards the earth, but we still see him like curse people. Like the mask takes control of the Skull Kid, Ganondorf takes control of Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the mask ever brought anything back to life, but Ganondorf does almost every time he comes back. Like he brought back Volvagia, again in the not the Fire Temple, Arbiter's Grounds. He brought back Stalwart.
Stalwart?
Yes.
Well, that was Zant, but I mean,
I
guess
Zant. But he gave Zant his
power. So yeah.
So I think like Ganondorf. At the end of Twilight Princess, I would imagine even if Zant had the mask that he was trying to get, that Midna eventually uses to open the barrier to the castle, I still think Ganondorf would have been more powerful than Zant with the mask. And I think...
Okay.
Because otherwise, you would imagine Ganondorf himself would be like, no, you are not allowed to have that because you're not allowed to have more power than me. So, yeah, like there would be that whole situation to where they'd be like, how about you don't try collecting these things because I'm supposed to be.
What things are you talking about Zant going after? I'm confused.
The different pieces to create the mask.
Zant wasn't going after those. Midna was. Zant never is going after the fused shadows.
I thought he was wanting it though.
No, he doesn't care. Like when you encounter him after collecting the last one, he literally sees them and is like, "These are junk," and throws them over his shoulder. Like he literally tosses them aside, and Midna's all like, "Whoa, you abuse our tribe's magic," and then he's like, "Our tribe's magic is garbage because I got this Ghani power. It's way better." So he's definitely not after the fused shadows because why would he?
So he did like a Luke Skywalker, and
yeah, threw it over his shoulder.
Yeah.
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely not after the fused shadows, and I don't think that they would match Ganondorf's power though, because when Midna uses the fused shadows, spoilers for the very old game. When Midna uses the fused shadows at the end of Twilight Princess, she tries to use it against Ganondorf. Link's all like, dramatic moment, reaching to stop her. She warps Link and Zelda out of the castle. This is all fresh in my head because I just finished a playthrough of Twilight Princess recently. And we don't see what happens. We presumably Ganondorf and Midna duke it out, but all we see is Ganondorf ride out of the exploding castle with Midna's helmet in his hands, and he literally breaks it in his hand and drops it, right? So yeah, I think Zant, if he wanted it or had gotten the fused shadows, I don't think he would be able to match Ganondorf's power, because I think Triforce trumps all other powers.
Yeah, it's literally
like, it doesn't matter how powerful anything is, Triforce is more powerful.
Ganondorf gets his power from the literal goddess of power.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was wrong in the details of Zant trying to get the mask, but we still had the same end answer, which even if Zant has the mask and that extra power, then he still wouldn't be stronger than Ganondorf. And I just look at Majora's Mask as similar to just like Termina's version of the Twilight Princess mask. Because like both games have like that ancient dark secret tribe that existed long ago and disappeared suddenly. Like almost, it's the same thing with the Zonai Breath of the Wild. Like it's just some ancient race that was magic and powerful, and something bad happened, they disappeared, and now it's a mystery that they put in the game just to make it seem like it's a living world with history. Yeah, but I equivalate whatever the Majora's Mask with that mask, and then like maybe they're not the same, but somewhere around the same amount of power. And then with Ganondorf, he's literally essentially blessed by the literal goddess of power. So I think that trumps all other sources of power. And then otherwise we'd see games where Ganondorf would presumably be trying to get, like he breaks in, he wants to go to the Sacred Realm to get the Triforce. If he felt the masks could give him even more power than the Triforce, we would see games where he's trying to get Majora's Mask, or he's trying to get the fused shadows or whatever.
Right.
But he's just chilling out in his tower in Wind Waker and playing piano and Ocarina of Time, and yeah, just all around being a not so cool dude. We did have a super chat while we were talking. Vernon Hardapple, $5. Will we ever see a Breath of the Wild style Zelda set on the Great Sea from Wind Waker?
Never say never, but I don't.
What do they mean by this? Like Breath of the Wild art style,
or an AR gameplay style? maybe.
So, like, even in Wind Waker HD, despite being able to sail faster when you go to an island, it still like cuts to black and has to load the area.
Right.
So
Well,
if you could just like dock the boat in an area and get out and run around, like when you go to
maybe. I think if
𝗏𝗏𝗃
they
Island.
did something like that, I mean, they'd have to make the islands bigger than Wind Waker ever had for any of the Wind Waker islands. Like, they'd all have to be bigger.
Even Wind Waker
But,
2, when it was planned, it changed it from the Great Sea to being mostly land.
Mm-hmm.
So
True.
I'm gonna say no. I don't think we will get a Breath of the Wild style game like when I think they could do one where it's like maybe a landmass, like a main land that's not quite as big as Breath of the Wild's. That's like 80% as big, and then the other 20% is broken up, like scattered across islands that are of a decent size. Like the provinces. Are there provinces in Skyward Sword?
Yeah.
Yeah, how they're basically islands on their own because you can't go outside of them. So essentially,
That's true.
you can think of them as their own islands. So I think we could get something with islands like around that size and some of the bigger islands in Wind Waker. And then like that is like 30% of the landmass spread out across like 5 or 6 different islands, and then the main game is just the overworld. But I don't think we would get one that was specifically like Wind Waker again, with the boat and stuff, and in the Breath of the Wild style. But it was a hope for Wind Waker HD that, and same with Skyward Sword HD, like when you fly into Skyloft, it would be nice to just fall down onto the land and not have to go to a loading screen or something. Because the Wii U could do it, because obviously it did it for Breath of the Wild. So yeah, it would just be cool. Or Twilight Princess. If like you just to go to a different portion of Hyrule Field, it cuts to black and has to reload it. It kind of sucks after playing Breath of the Wild. So I can see why you would want it, but I don't think that would be something they would do.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. But it'd be cool.
Yeah. Okay. Pick out the final question, Daniel.
You pick. I picked like 3 already.
Okay.
So...
Everyone's talking about Majora and Ganondorf.
Spark to the debate.
Was there any more in Discord? I can't check Discord with what we're doing.
Discord. Not that we haven't like already answered.
Okay, here's a fun one.
All right.
So these are 2 kind of short ones, so we'll do both of them. Aaron says, do you want Nintendo to add new Amiibo outfits for the sequel or just keep what was already made? That's actually a fear of mine, is Breath of the Wild 2 essentially getting rid of most, if not all, of the outfits from Ocarina of Time and like all the different Amiibo swords and stuff. Because they did say, like there was the interview with Aonuma where he said, wait, what? Is it not?
What?
I had a thing pop up saying the audio bitrate was 0.
Oh.
Aonuma, where he said, but But I can hear myself on the stream. That's weird. Maybe it's just an error on
Yeah,
YouTube's
I
part.
was just playing some of this stream and I could hear it just fine. So
Yeah. So there's an interview with 𝗷𝗍𝗄 where he was asked about like Majora's Mask and all the other Link outfits being in the game and stuff like that. And he said that like the Amiibo content and the DLC content weren't necessarily canon to the story.
Right.
So, which was his way of like, I guess, just being like, oh, we wanted to add it in. This is why Link has a red Nintendo Switch shirt, which is ridiculous if it were to be canon.
Right.
But
obviously the Nintendo Switch shirt is not canon.
Yeah. So there's all that stuff that they added, which I don't imagine that would be, but I do think most of the other outfits, like the rock climbing gear and stuff like that, will come. But maybe they'll also be different updated versions of it. Like how we have the updated version of the champion tunic with the Hyrule soldier, or what's it called?
The Hylian tunic, like all the leather padding and stuff from it.
Yeah.
You mean?
Like where it's basically
right.
those two mixed together. Tunic. I think we'll get something like that to where maybe you can add on certain things to outfits to give it more abilities. I think that would be an interesting way to have all of the same stuff in the game and it not feel like, oh, well, they didn't add anything new. It's just the same stuff that we had before. But if they add them in and then give us like optional upgrades like we've seen with the champion tunic and the leather stuff, but with other things, and then it adds in other effects as well, or boosts effects, I think that would be an interesting way to do it. But I am afraid that it's just going to be like, none of this stuff is included. And it'll be sad, because Majora's Mask is really, really handy. As is the Korok mask. But then, with like items like the Korok mask, there presumably would be no reason for it in Breath of the Wild 2, so you would imagine, that would be one of the things that they remove.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they would just replace it with something else that's useful to whatever's in that game. Do you know what I mean? Like, if there's no Koroks, then say whatever. If they're picking up muffins off the ground, you have your Muffin Man hat or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be the exact same items. But I do think that...
Because it's the same thing as the Great Fairy Mask.
Oh, yeah, from Majora's Mask. That's true. So I feel like they'll probably just treat the Amiibo functionality the same as they did with Breath of the Wild. And like what I did like about it actually is that most of the outfits that you could get from Amiibo specifically, they didn't have perks that you couldn't get elsewhere, because you don't want to have something that's like gonna take away from the core experience. Like you mentioned the climber's gear earlier, you get those from shrines, right? If that was an Amiibo only thing, that would suck for people who didn't have the Amiibos, right? But because most of the Amiibo clothes are basically like, just different tunics for different versions of the green tunic for Link, then if you don't, like, they're really cool to have, they're great to have, but if you don't have them, you're not gonna like miss anything that's like too much of a core experience. And there is even a green tunic that's like the traditional green tunic in the game as well anyways. So I thought that was actually a good way to handle it. It was like really cool bonus stuff, but nothing that's like vital either. And so yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that would be good to just continue it that way. And I don't see why they wouldn't, but I would like to see them add more, because there have been Amiibos that have come out since, like even the Link's Awakening and Zelda plus Loftwing Amiibo that came out after Breath of the Wild. Neither of those do give you any exclusive items. So it'd be cool to have like any Amiibo that have come out since then, or maybe even some non-Zelda Amiibo, just to add some cool items in there that might be fun or useful.
Mhm.
Just a thought.
Give us a Mario hat. Lets us jump a little bit
Mario
higher.
hat? Sure. Why not, right?
I want to see the bunny hood because it'd be a cool way to run faster.
It would be.
The postman hat because you need to get Hyrule's economy going again, and that requires messages to be delivered, and Link is the right person to do it because he's going everywhere anyways. Or Beetle. And then finally I want the... I forgot the name of it. The no, not Don Garrow.
Don Garrow's mask?
No, the frog mask.
That's the Don Garrow's mask.
Okay. Then yeah, the Don Garrow's mask. Because you really need to be keeping up with all the frogs. Like
yeah, there's a lot of frogs in Breath of the Wild, so...
Yeah, like there's a whole cutscene where the main focus is a frog. Yeah. And for some reason, Nintendo decided we're not allowed to talk to them. It's horrible. Give us the frog mask. Let's talk to the frogs again. Yeah, so I said that was going to be a quick question, but it really wasn't. So the final part of that was... I forgot where I was at. That one was from Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
There was one that was like 2 or 3 questions right above his. But now I can't find Aaron's question because I accidentally scrolled away.
Oh no.
Yeah, was there anything in the Discord?
No.
Okay.
Not so much.
Alright. So this one comes from like 2 different people, but it kind of falls in the same thing. The Basement Band. Do you think they will update Minish Cap? And then a follow along from where is it? Someone asking if we think Capcom would ever do a Zelda game again. I'm sorry I can't find who said it, but that was it was another part of it. Do we think Capcom would ever do a Zelda game again, and do you think they'll update Minish Cap? I can't hear you.
I don't think so. But
yeah,
I'd love it if they did for both. But I don't think so. To be honest.
Yeah. Then Nintendo hired all the people who worked on the Capcom Zelda games. Or not all of them, but all the important people. Like Daniel was talking about earlier with Fujibayashi. Now working on Breath of the Wild. And he was the one who was behind all the Minish Cap stuff. And they started that whole relationship with Capcom through essentially blackmail or extortion. Right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. So I don't think that was a very healthy friendship between them. But again, that was 20 years ago, so I don't really think it matters anymore. And I don't think they really need Capcom. I'm sure Capcom would love to work on a Zelda game again, but I don't think Nintendo would necessarily go for them when they could just have Grezzo or Tantalus or someone redo Minish Cap. So that kind of answers both of them. I don't think Capcom would do anything again. Earlier I talked about how I had one question from someone, or a comment from someone who thought Nintendo wouldn't be able to remake or do anything with Minish Cap because Capcom had rights to it. And then I did all that research and found out that it wasn't just Capcom. It was like a mix between, it was like a new team equally owned by Capcom and Sega and Nintendo.
Right.
And yeah, they've already re-released Minish Cap on the Wii U. They did it on that 3DS thing. They did Capcom's other Four Swords game and updated it with online play through 𝗏𝗀. So I think 𝗏𝗀 would likely be the one if anything was to be done with Minish Cap. For some reason, I don't see Tantalus doing a 2D Zelda.
Yeah, I don't know.
And yeah, I guess that's it. One question for you. I never really shield surfed, almost said sword surfed. But a final question, really quick, Daniel. Someone asked about, do you think any new mechanics will come for shield surfing in Breath of the Wild 2, or any new features be added to it? Now, this originally started in Twilight Princess, and then they let us do tricks in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, well, in Twilight Princess, it wasn't your shield, but
yeah, it was
like a piece of ice,
tree thing, yeah,
frozen leaf or something. But I mean, it was the same idea, yeah. It
was Kevin asked it. What mechanical evolution would come from shield surfing? Something goofy, cool, yet practical.
Maybe being able to like launch yourself somehow, or like maybe jumps will get you a little more airtime, and then you could go into that sort of vertical launching mechanic that from that patent that I mentioned earlier, into or like out of a shield surf into that, maybe to get like higher up, or I don't know. That could be cool.
It would be interesting.
Use this time rewinding mechanic on your shield to slide back up the hill. I don't know. I don't know.
Do they let you use arrows while shield surfing?
Yes, you can use arrows, but you can't use a sword or a weapon. So maybe that's the next step. Let us actually use our weapons properly while surfing.
The only upgrade I could think of. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead. I'm good.
If we could use like a wooden shield, if we're going downhill and then there's like a river or a creek or something, and you have a wooden shield, maybe you could use it to like skid across the water if you have enough speed. And maybe the same thing if you have like a thick iron shield, like the one that we get in Skyward Sword. Not necessarily the Hylian shield, but I assume that would work as well. But yeah, I think that would be an interesting addition. That's really the only thing I could think that they could add. Maybe, yeah, that's it. So Daniel, what is going on with your life and YouTube?
My life and YouTube?
Yeah.
Normal stuff, man. No, I guess are we wrapping this up?
Yeah, I guess so. I said we were going to do one final question and we did 3 more, so
that's fair. That's tends to be how we do, isn't it? Well, okay. Yeah, I mean, if you guys are so inclined and want to hear more of me talking and all that stuff, I'm Daniel. You can find links to all of my stuff under 𝗵𝗲 in the video description below here if you're on the YouTube. And I make videos about Zelda, specifically Zelda Dungeons, but other ones as well sometimes. And I stream twice a week, every Wednesday morning and Saturday night. So Wednesdays are kind of our Zelda days, whereas Saturday is just other games or whatever I'm feeling like. So it's a fun time though. We have a good time. We're chill. We're fun. I'm been a little slow on the upload side of things lately, just because I'm doing stuff to improve the visual presentation of videos. Blah blah blah. You would have to see when the video is done to know what I mean, but doing some fancy things, so it's taking a little bit to get my next video out there, but it's going well. Things are good. Go check me out if you like, or don't if you don't like. Live your life. Don't let me tell you what to do. What about you, Jessie? How's life in YouTube? And
it's been picking back up thanks to everyone who helped support and get the laptop and stuff. It kind of feels like every time the YouTube starts reaching sort of a peak where the videos are making more views, more people are subscribing, all that fun stuff, something just always seems to happen to like make it go back down. With the like family stuff in like 2020 and then early 2021 when my hand was paralyzed, and then this time the laptop messing up, and it's like, I don't know, it's just hard sometimes to try to build it back up, because you post a video to where before it would get like 10 times the amount of views, and now you do it and everyone's like, oh, I guess this person's making videos again. And then where you go so long without uploading something, YouTube's weird algorithm is like, okay, well, nobody's watched one of your videos in a while, so we're not going to share it to as many people. Which is why it's important to do the notification thing, which
That's true.
Rarely ever mention anymore in videos. But it's been amazing with I was assuming the worst from the video that I did the other day on the Twilight Princess thing, because it was something that you and I had already talked about literally 1,000 times, and it wasn't even accurate as to what all the articles were reporting on. As we discussed earlier, it wasn't someone saying that there was a leak or anything, it was just someone saying that he would like to see it.
Right.
Which ended up actually becoming the reason I did make the video, to get rid of the weird misinformation that people were always just jumping on, like the hype train, being like, oh my god, this rumor, I hope it comes true. So I was expecting the worst. Like, we get people that will comment on videos, like whenever we did the Oracle videos, when that game, do you remember when it released last year? The Oracle remix? Do you remember that collection released last year for the 35th anniversary? Yeah. No, so anytime we'd mentioned, yeah, we had a few videos talking about that, and we even mentioned it on podcast because it seemed like people were asking every single time. And every time we talked about it, we talked about, or at least I talked about, reasons why I didn't believe it was going to be happening. But we still got those people that's like, oh my god, you're always saying the Oracle games are going to come, but they haven't been announced, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, did you happen to watch the video? So I was expecting comments like that, where people would be like, oh my god, this is Twilight Princess HD, you're always saying it's going to come, blah blah blah, and like hyping up the rumors and stuff. And so I was, that's why I was so excited earlier whenever I was reading through the comments, and I messaged you and I was like, oh, these comments are so nice, because without posting videos for a while and then talking about literally the same thing that I've said 3-4 times so far, I felt it was going to be a bunch of negative stuff, but it was all really, really positive. And then I remembered that all the people that subscribe are awesome, and I shouldn't have thought that they were all going to be like, oh, this is stupid, it's just one of the stupid rumor clickbait channels. But yeah, it ended up being really cool. We have your channel here on the screen. People can see it. Some of the videos that you make, dungeon design stuff, you're going through which game now? Are you going to be going through? Is it a surprise?
It's not a surprise, no, because I have an update video even saying that it's
what's next,
what it's going to be. So what's next? Yeah, it's going to be Breath of the Wild, but I just want to make the video as good as possible, so I'm really taking my time with it, is what I'm going to say. So also have some potentially a couple of really exciting collabs coming up, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's exciting stuff. But we've already done all the other 3 Zelda games, and then once Breath of the Wild is finished, I'll be going to do the 2D Zelda dungeons for that series. So it's a good time. It's a good time.
So another question I have for you. If people wanted to support you in some way,
they can't. No, I'm just kidding.
Is there like a way they could do that financially, as like through some website, maybe named Patreon, or buying one of your shirts, or
Yes, I mean, you can find all of that stuff in any of my video descriptions, actually. But yeah, I always like feel bad even mentioning or asking about, or asking or mentioning it. But I do have Patreon and channel memberships open on my channel, as well. So it's always a big help when people are able to support creators, because YouTube only does so much. So yeah.
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 And most of your shirts and stuff are basically inside jokes for people that watch the channel and streams. Like, I see the bananas and Greg.
And Greg, yes, the bananas and Greg. And just, the logo as well. So, yeah. Yeah. It's a good time, though. We have a good time. You feel free to join the burger gang of burger gangsters, and yeah,
cool
it's all
stuff.
a little more low-key and fun.
Yeah, so links to everything is in the description of all of my videos. If you want to check out Daniel's Twitter or Instagram or YouTube or Twitch. Same for 𝗙𝗵𝗲. She's now doing a lot more streams, which are really fun to watch. The links to her Twitter and stuff is there. The Geek Apprentice does Zelda content on her channel as well. You can go watch them. They're really good. Even though Daniel, Geek, and I all do Zelda content, it's different types of Zelda content. So it's not like just the same type of videos being spread out across different channels. Like each channel, like you have the dungeon designs, and sometimes you'll do news updates and everything, and Geek does a lot of music or comparisons and reactions and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a bunch of different amazing Zelda content, and of course 𝗙𝗵𝗲's every now and then maybe streaming Zelda. What was the last stuff that she was streaming? Twilight Princess?
She finished Tunic, so she's been streaming Twilight Princess on her channel as
And
well.
you've been doing Ori.
Yeah, Ori's good, man.
Are you playing on
I've been
Switch?
streaming Ori, and yes, the Switch version. The better optimized version. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, apparently. So there's a whole story about that, apparently, where because the Switch's hardware was not as good as Xbox, obviously, Ori was initially an Xbox exclusive, for those wondering. They, in order to get the game to run on Switch, they had to optimize the heck out of it, and apparently they optimized it so well that the games actually now run better on Switch than on Xbox, which is kind of just funny to think about. So that's the power of good optimization, baby. So it's great. No, the Ori collection is truly fantastic. Truly fantastic.
All right, I think that is everything. So go check out everyone. I have some interesting vids coming on. I will say next week's podcast, for the people that stayed for the 2.5 hours.
Yes.
Next week's Hylian Gamescast, if things go as planned, will be very unique and was originally planned as an April Fool's stream. If you remember when I first talked to you about it, Daniel.
I maybe don't remember what we're talking about, so you might have to bring me up to speed after the fact or later. But
yeah, so I guess that's everything. It was nice being able to stream and do everything with you guys. We've been going on for about 3 hours, and we didn't even have a quiz or a top 10 list or anything or ranking dungeons. So this is why 𝗙𝗵𝗲 needs to be here to smack me when I'm going on random topics, but we answered a lot more questions than we normally do. So that was a bit fun. We had a lot of actual news topics. And
yeah,
talked a lot about
lots of news.
Metroid, everything. Yeah, it was great. It was fun. If you can, go listen to the podcast audio form on iTunes or other apps. SoundCloud, maybe. I don't even know. And everyone, most importantly, have a great night.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks for watching.